Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back for another week, exciting week of What's Going Down right here on YouTube. I am, of course, your host, big time Jimmy Larson, and of course, the man with the power, the man of the hour, the man who is just too sweet to be sour, my co host, Mr. C.T. Bishop.
Thank you, baby. I'm happy to be here. What's going down?
For those of you listening that may either recognize or don't recognize the way that I described my co host this week, it is, of course, a line that was used multiple times by multiple different personalities in professional wrestling throughout the 1970s and 1980s. But perhaps the most famous of them all for using it was Mr. Superstar Billy Graham.
Yes,
Superstar
sir.
Billy Graham, of course, was a long reigning worldwide Wrestling Federation champion. And we will be discussing today a lot about different title lineage, multiple title reigns that wrestlers have had over the years, the long running title reigns that wrestlers have had, the short running ones that wrestlers have had, how they've defended the belts, how they didn't defend the belts, who was deserving, who wasn't deserving. All that and more will be discussed today. Of course, we also have to quickly mention that there was unfortunately a major loss to the wrestling industry this week. We will talk a little bit more on that later, and we will have actually we will talk a lot about that later. We have a whole discussion coming up, but first things first, let's get a little business in there. You, of course, are listening to us on YouTube for the What's Going Down podcast. And if you have any questions during the show that you would like us to answer, any questions about our upcoming topic, you can send those along. Bishop, how do they do that?
Well, the best ways to do it is right in the chat, right in the live chat, right in the chat. If you're listening to us, right in the live chat. That's the best way to do it. Or you can send us an email. The email address is right there in the description box below, right here on the channel as you're listening. Also, we have a Discord. If you want to join our Discord server, the invitation link again, that's in the description box below. However you want to ask us the questions, whether it's through the live chat, the email address, or the Discord, feel free. I have that all open and running, and we will answer any questions that you have as we go along.
Okay, and also you want to check out some more of CT Bishop and other places, you can check him out. How do you check you out?
All right, to check me out, to check out the Josue Skits, the link is in the description box below. We made it easy. I made it easy. All you have to do is click, click, click. Also, Tuesday Night Tussle. Tuesday Night Tussle, that is in the description box below as well. And so just so we can plug Jimmy Larson, I'll play. No, and also big time Jimmy Larson's channel, where his show at the movies. The link is in the description box below. That is how you can keep watching all of our content. That is how you are able to just keep enjoying everything that we do. Go to the description box below. You're able to see Big Time Jimmy Larson's channel and his show at the movies. You're able to see Tuesday Night Tussle and all of my crazy, crazy, crazy comedy skits. Everything is in the description box below.
Speaking of big time Jimmy Larson, yes, that's me. Speaking
Yes,
of
sir.
at the movies, this week, this Monday, of course, is my birthday. So just yesterday, we posted the episode 5 of At the Movies, and it is my all-time favorite movie, Midnight Madness. I talk about this movie all the time. Now you can go and see why by checking out the latest review, and you can check out all the previous episodes as well in the archives on my channel. As he said, he's linked that in the description below of here. So make sure you check those out. But first, you're going to want to keep listening because this is going to be good. As we are now about to discuss world titles, any kind of titles in professional wrestling and the lineage. How are titles important? Why are titles important? We are going to go over all that right now. We started the program with a mention of superstar Billy Graham.
Yes.
Superstar Billy Graham, of course, was one of the great Worldwide Wrestling Federation champions. And this week, there was a lot of discussion on another channel about who was the greatest Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion of all time. And in my opinion, that would be Bruno Sammartino. Reason being, Bruno Sammartino, not only the longest reigning world heavyweight champion of all time for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, but he didn't just hold the title for a long time. He also defended the title for a long time. Every single time the shows would come to Madison Square Garden, they would be a total sellout, and everybody was not hearing about Bruno Sammartino on their televisions. There was no worldwide television yet. They were reading about him in newspapers and magazine articles, and they all wanted to see the man for himself and see the world heavyweight champion defend his title. Bruno Sammartino, in my opinion, is the greatest champion of all time because he had those multiple sellouts. Today, wrestling sells out by name itself. You don't even check the card anymore. You just see, hey, wrestling's coming to my town. I'm going to go see it. Therefore, no champion, in my opinion, will ever be the kind of champion that Bruno Sammartino would be. What do you think, Bishop?
No, I definitely agree with you. Like you said, he defended the belt. He defended that championship every single time. And that says a lot. That does says a lot because it says a lot because the facts are is that nowadays, and this started and we're gonna talk about more about this in a minute. But nowadays, you rarely see a champion, defend the title, all the time. You rarely see it. I mean, okay, now with television,
well, just to correct that a minute, I know what you meant, but I want to make sure our listeners understood that. They defend the titles, but they don't keep the titles.
no, that
They lose the championships back and forth, to the point where you can watch and skip for a whole month. Brock Lesnar could be champion. You skip watching for a month, you come back, Brock Lesnar's champion. But you do a little research and learn that within that month you skipped, the title changed hands 3 times before it went back to Lesnar.
no, yeah, but it's
I think that's what you meant,
well,
right?
well, I mean that's partially what I meant, but also at the same time.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at Brock Lesnar. Okay, let's take a look at Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, he was what, the Universal Champion for, and this was even before his first title defense, or he was like, let's say 2 months. Let's say 2 months, because of whatever deal that he has with Vince McMahon, or that he had with Vince McMahon, because I don't know if he's with WWE anymore, but he does not work house shows, and would only work certain pay-per-views because of the money. And you rarely. I mean, okay, if Bruno San Martino was in his prime today, you would, with the same attitude that he had, with the same charisma, with the everything that he had back then. Not only would you see him defend it, on house shows, you'll see him defend it on Raw, or if he had the WWE title on SmackDown, you'll see him defend it on pay-per-views. You'll see him defend it everywhere. You don't see you don't see somebody like Brock Lesnar defending it on a house show. It's only on certain, and there's quite a few people in history that have done something similar. Where it's, especially growing up as a kid, I started noticing, like, okay, Bret Hart would defend it, whether it was on TV, pay-per-views, house shows, whatever. It's just, but going back to the point is that, Bruno Sammartino, he defended it everywhere. He defended the belt anywhere, whether he was working New York or he was working in some poor town that only drew like 50 people, for the crowd. It didn't matter. He gave it his all. He defended it every time. He gave a great show, and there's nobody like Bruno. There's definitely nobody like Bruno. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Indeed, and he wasn't the only long-reigning champion. Of course, like we said, there were other long-reigning champions, but Bruno defended that belt everywhere.
Exactly.
He would always show up and put that belt on the line, and he would give the fight of all fights. It would be where you believed tonight is the night Bruno Sammartino's going to lose the bet, and then he doesn't. And then you got to the point where after a few years of this happening, where he just never lost, you never thought he would lose. And then enter Ivan Koloff.
Oh
And
yes.
Ivan Koloff, nobody believed Ivan Koloff is going to be the guy to knock off Bruno, and he
Yep.
did. And that right away skyrocketed Ivan Koloff as somebody who's a believable person because not because he beat Bruno Sammartino, because he won the title when nobody believed that it would happen. And this is what I mean when I said we're going to talk about the importance of a title, how it can make or break a character. That title meant everything with Bruno. Everybody knew Bruno Sammartino's the champion. He's the guy. And now Ivan Koloff's won the title. It's like, oh my God, Ivan Koloff must be great if he actually won the title from Bruno.
Hmm.
Of course, as we saw, Ivan's career did not skyrocket how it should have due to some political issues.
Things do happen, things do happen in the wrestling world,
But yeah, you look at all those guys from back then that careers they skyrocketed because of the title. Guys like Pedro Morales and Bob Backlund, their careers skyrocketed because they were the world champion.
I mean, well, here's the thing though. With Bob Backlund, he wasn't even supposed to be champion for long. He was, you go back to many of the interviews to people that were there. They will tell you he wasn't meant to be champion for long. Don't get me wrong. I like Bob Backlund. He's definitely a nice guy, but like okay, he has his amateur wrestling background, and this was even before he came into professional wrestling. He has
Hey,
amateur wrestling
bro, I hate
background.
to do this. Keep going. I have to just take a break for a minute,
Oh
but
no,
keep
no.
going.
Hey, I
Keep
do it all the
keep our
time. I do it all the time,
keep
bro.
our.
Yeah, go ahead. All right, so Bob Backlund, he has his amateur wrestling background. Okay, that's where he started at. When he got into the pros and everything switched or whatever, he had no charisma. Bob Backlund he was kind of that all American boy, that all American boy. Like if this was before the '80s, before the '70s, where before television really took professional wrestling to a whole new level. Okay, I can see it happening. I can see it happening because he doesn't have to do promos. Uh, uh, he doesn't have to speak on the mic. So all he has to do is show up and wrestle. You know. So with the whole thing with Bob Backlund, he just he couldn't really especially in the days of television as starting where you really need to be good at promos. You need to be able to win the crowd over with your words and not just with your action. He couldn't do that. I mean, he wasn't marketable. He was not a marketable wrestler at all. So somebody like Bob Backlund, again, he's a nice guy. I've met him several times. I've spoken to him several times. But he was, at the time when he was champion, he wasn't marketable. And many, many, many people have said that. Many people have said that about him. Many people back in the day, from your superstars, Billy Graham, to just other people. Um, I think his second run in the WWF, where he really it started off kind of like the same old of, okay, I'm Bob Backlund. Then he went into this crazy Bob Backlund mode where he went, I think, and that was more marketable. It was where he was building a character where he was just tired of the crap, he was tired of the nonsense, and he was attacking anybody, giving anybody the chicken wing. So somebody like Bob Backlund at his second run with the WWF, if he would have done that his first run, I think his title run would have been more memorable. Now, yes, he was a long running champion, but he wasn't meant to be. He wasn't meant to be. They didn't want that for him because of the fact that he wasn't marketable. So I just it's really something for me that I can't go on with. you know, uh, now again you got somebody like Bruno Sammartino. He was it was like he drew the crowd in. He drew the crowd in. He gave the crowd, 1,000%. Gave the Ivan Koloff. Okay, yeah, his career didn't skyrocket. It didn't skyrocket the way it should have. But again, you really take a look at his work. You take a look at his work ethic, the way he did things. It's like he gave it his all, 100%. Now, comparing those wrestlers to other wrestlers, and I'll say like a Hulk Hogan or whatever. You can't compare them. You cannot compare them. It's just really sad that uh, that these wrestlers, as time progressed, you rarely ever found one that, not number one, was deserving of a title shot, was deserving of a title run, was deserving of a long title run, and one that would actually defend it 20, every night that he went out there to wrestle. And I'll give an example, and I don't know if Big Time was gonna talk about him, but I'll mention it. And I gotta say Bret Hart. I think Bret Hart was a great champion. He was a great champion. He was defending it. Especially this was in the '90s when wrestling on television really started doing more than it did in the '80s and even the '70s. But Bret Hart, okay, every Saturday I wake up and I would see superstars, and this was even before Monday Night Raw and all of that. You would see wrestling on Superstars on Saturday morning on Superstars. You would see wrestling on Tuesday or on Wednesday or whatever name was it, like primetime wrestling, whatever WWF was calling it at the time. You rarely, Bret Hart, anytime he was on any of those shows, he was defending the belt. He was defending the belt. You didn't see that from a lot of people. You did not see that from a lot of people. And I gotta say Hogan. Hogan, when the only time he ever defended the belt, he was on a pay per view. That's it. Or maybe on some house shows here and there. And he would defend the belt. You rarely ever saw him defend the belt on a regular TV taping, whether it was Superstars or whatever. When the whole Monday Night Raw thing came about, uh, it was just things really started changing. Things really started changing to you rarely saw a wrestler defend the belt on Raw or SmackDown. There's only a couple that would do it every week. Um, they might do it on a house show because they might do it on a house show, but again, a house show is different from a TV, from TV. The heart, at least at the time, on a house show, it's okay for anybody that's into comic books, right? Like the Marvel universe or whatever. A house show, you can't say it's canon to the storyline. A house show is where they test out different things. So, okay, yeah, but they gave you a good show. They gave you a good show on a house show. So somebody like, again, Bruno, okay, Bret Hart, he went out there on house shows, bam, bam, bam. He's defending the belt on TV. He's defending the belt. It's like you rarely saw that.
All right, I'm back. I
Go
am
ahead.
sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it.
What did I miss?
Oh no, I was just comparing certain people. Like when I was talking about Bob Backlund, how when he got his first run, it wasn't, it's like a lot of people were saying that he wasn't meant to have it for that long. He wasn't marketable. I mean, yeah, he was, and especially during that time where there was television, he couldn't cut a promo. He was like, "Hi, I'm Bob Backlund," like, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a nice guy and everything, but the first run, uh, okay, I give him the
Which
credit.
is why he was one of those rare cases where a babyface would end up with a manager.
Yeah, exactly.
They gave him Arnold Skolin to do the talking for him
No,
for that reason.
exactly. Now, as I was saying, on his second run and with the WWF, where he first came out trying to do the same thing, you can tell it wasn't working out. It was not
Well,
working.
his first night back, well, I don't know if it was his first night back, but it was the first major night back was 93 Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, even I did not know Bob Backlund at that point
Mm-hmm.
because I was a young kid. I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not see Bob Backlund beforehand because Bob was already gone before I was born.
Hmm.
And at that point, I was not tape trading and all and seeing old tapes of Bob. So he was brand new to me.
Hmm.
And I had no idea who this guy was, but he's starting off the Raw Rumble with Ric Flair.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, who is this guy? Should I care about him? And then he made it all the way to the end before he was finally eliminated. And I was like, who is this guy? And he got a standing ovation. So the crowd was into him. But then Vince didn't do anything with that. They could have capitalized on him right there and made him like this guy who's a legend that still got it to the point where he can hang longer than the young guys.
Hmm.
They didn't do any of that.
No,
And
yeah.
then they threw him into a throwaway match at WrestleMania 9
Yeah.
just a few months later with Razor Ramon.
Yep.
And I lost interest in him.
No, and the thing is that if McMahon would have given him a manager at that point, because okay, in the ring, and I'm gonna say this, in the ring, Bob Backlund he can go. Even to this day now he can go, but on the mic at the time he still didn't have it. He still didn't have it. If McMahon would have given him a manager like like he had a manager in the '80s and really and really just get the story going or whatever. I think it would have been more memorable after that Royal
Our
Rumble.
manager would have helped at that point because you got to remember this is the era where everything was getting messed up because Hogan was trying to make his comeback and muscle his way back into Bret Hart's run.
Hmm. But
So
but
that was really,
but yeah,
I
no,
think if Hogan wasn't there in '93 and maybe they had started pushing the Bob Backlund Bret Hart stuff early in '93 instead of '94, maybe then Bob would have had a shot in '93 because Bret was the champion and all. Maybe after
mhm.
maybe if Bret defeated Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9 and then would go on to have a program with Bob Backlund, maybe that would have worked.
Yeah,
You
probably.
know what I mean?
Yeah, probably, and that was my second point. That was my second point was that it wasn't until it wasn't until that '94 when they started doing the feud between the program between Bob Backlund and Bret Hart when Bob Backlund all of a sudden became crazy, and he started
Right, but then he had
getting
to go heel too with that. If it had
yeah.
happened in '93, I think he could have remained babyface and did it.
Maybe, but I think the heel turn was the right move to make.
Well, part of
Especially.
what made the heel turn work too, going back to what you were saying about managers, because
Mm,
Bob didn't really have a lot of ability. They kind of segued Bob into an already existing feud that was going on in '94 between Bret and his brother Owen,
yep, exactly. It,
because
it added.
they redid the towel incident.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it added something to it. I think I mean, like I said, I agree with you that if Hogan wasn't there and they would have done it earlier, yeah. But again, I think the only thing that saved it, the only thing that saved Bob Backlund's second run was when he turned heel. And when he turned heel, and it's almost like his promos gotten better. Like you remember when he goes off and he was in so many different neighborhoods or different cities and towns, like calling people different names. Basically like trying to be a pop. This was even before he said he was gonna run for president. It was like he was just kind of
Yeah, it was before that.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean. You gotta remember how he was. They had all these
Well, by
vignettes.
'95 though, they had kind of turned him into a joke.
Yeah, and for
Because
that.
I can't forgive WrestleMania 11. I don't even say forget. I
Hmm.
say I can't forgive
Hmm.
WrestleMania 11 for a lot of reasons. But Bob Backlund, and as a kid, I loved it because I was 10 years old and I thought, hey, this is really funny. But now looking back, it cringes me every time seeing Bob Backlund playing chess with Jonathan Taylor Thomas
Oh yeah, that was
and
for WrestleMania
conflicting.
11, right?
Yes,
Right
WrestleMania 11,
here in Connecticut.
1995.
Here in
The
Connecticut.
only WrestleMania to ever happen in Connecticut. Thanks for taking a dump on us, Vince.
Yep.
Um, but hey,
My uncle went to
it
that one.
just it was just so bad because it makes. As a kid, I loved it because I loved Jonathan Taylor Thomas. As a
Yep.
kid, I was a huge Home Improvement fan. But they have Bob Backlund being dumber than Jonathan Taylor Thomas. He's smarter than Bob Backlund, and they make Bob Backlund look like a joke. And then Bob has the match with Bret, which Bret himself has called the worst match of his career.
Yep.
uh, I'm sorry, I love Roddy Piper, but hearing Piper over and over and over and over again, never shutting up, going, "What do you say? what do you say?
I know.
And even when Bob supposedly gave up, all we heard was, "Rah!"
Yep.
The last time we checked, "Rah!" was not yes.
Exactly.
But somehow
It
he said yes, and
Yeah.
the match is over.
Yeah.
Then Jim Ross, who's not even doing commentary, why is he not doing commentary for WrestleMania 11? Why are we listening to the team of Jerry Lawler and Vince McMahon without Jim Ross, who they have on staff?
Yeah.
That's because Jim Ross was doing Radio WWF with Gorilla Monsoon.
Yeah.
That's another freaking day. We'll save Radio WWF for another day.
Yeah.
But
no, but I think
Jim Ross comes over to try and interview Bob Backlund and says, "Hey, Bob, what happened out there?" Bob's looking around into the stars and goes, "Did you see it?
Yeah.
I saw the light. Did you see the light?" And then he walks away, and Jim Ross makes him look like an even bigger idiot, going, "Well, there were a lot of lights up there." What the heck is...
Well, I mean,
and at this point, nobody's taking Bob Backlund seriously.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what that, right? And you said it earlier. You know, when you were a kid, you thought it was funny as heck. You know, you enjoyed it as a kid. And you got to remember that at the time, during the '90s, the majority audience that Vince McMahon was trying to appeal to was kids. It was
to be fair, by '95, they didn't have much of an audience.
Well, I mean, but again, it just goes to show that that even if Vince McMahon fails, because and he's failed a lot, and let's be honest, he's failed a lot on with a lot of different things. He's not afraid to try new things here and there. As long as as long as he finds it believable, I guess. I don't know what's the right way to say it, but
yeah, because Mantar was very believable.
No, but I'm saying, like at the time, at times in the '90s, during the '90s when he was.
I know what you meant.
Yeah.
I got to throw that in there once in a while.
Hey, Bastion Booger, come on now. That was another flop,
And before that, he was Frere Ferguson.
Oh yeah. And it's crazy because for me I think he was he was more believable as Bastion Booger than he was as Fryer.
And then years later he came back as the father of Big Dick Johnson.
Yep. Oh my gosh.
It's so bad. I can't. But anyway, this is not about bad gimmicks.
But yeah, no. Oh, okay. So back to the titles. Okay, I mentioned Hulk Hogan previously. I didn't get into it previously, but okay, Hogan had a pretty. He's had pretty long title runs.
Before you get into that, I have one thing to say about Hogan, because this is going to get long, what we're going to discuss in a second.
Go ahead.
But Hulk Hogan is one of those guys that I mentioned at the top of the program that needs to have a title in order to matter. Mm-hmm. When Hogan returned in 2002, my brother and I both said, after he had turned red and yellow again, when he wrestled Triple H, he became red and yellow again. My brother and I both said, though, something's missing. He doesn't feel like Hulk Hogan. And then he beat the Undertaker, I believe it was Judgment Day.
Yep.
Which Howard Stern, like an idiot, said, yeah, Hulk Hogan's apparently wrestling Undertaker for the title at this pay-per-view. I think Hogan should let Undertaker win and give it to the young guys. Undertaker's just about as old as Hogan.
Yep.
But anyway, when Hogan won the title, my brother and I went, that's it. That was missing. Now he feels like Hulk Hogan again.
Yep.
So Hogan's one of those guys who needs a belt. But go on.
No, I agree. But here's the problem with that is that, as we were saying before with Bruno Sammartino, that he defended it everywhere. Okay, and he had a long title run. Okay, Hogan had a long title run. He's had multiple long title runs, but it's like okay. I guess the only time he would ever defend it would be on house shows, but let's be real. Like I mentioned a comic book reference, right? Earlier, which was the house shows are not considered canon to the storylines for TV.
I actually had this conversation with somebody earlier, though, that the thing with the house shows then compared to house shows now, that's where you drew your money, because television was all syndicated.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't make sense to have your world champion show up on TV. And actually, this was just discussed actually on one of the other podcasts I listened to recently. I don't remember which one it was, but they were discussing the similarness that I think it was Stick to Wrestling, but I don't remember. But they were talking about that the problem was that you had all these guys showing up on TV who were champions and parents at home who didn't have money to go to the wrestling matches, they would say, "Why should I pay to go see this guy at a wrestling match when my kid can see him on TV?"
Mhm.
Whereas Hulk Hogan, Vince was kind of doing the right thing. You couldn't see Hulk Hogan on TV, so if you wanted to see Hulk Hogan, you had to go dish out your money to go and see him, and he drew the houses.
But
So it was
that
actually smart business back then.
But that's the problem. That's the problem that I see because that, at least in my opinion, that's a problem that I've seen because okay, somebody like me, I grew up poor. Somebody like me, I grew up poor as heck. We had no money, no nothing. We were barely able to go to a house show. Let's say once every 2 or 3 years, something like that. Okay, and the only way that we could because what was it back in the day in the 90s, right, 80s and 90s, Vince would do a show at the Hartford Civic Center and at the New Haven Coliseum, and when that was still around, he would do those two shows in here in Connecticut. Okay, we couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford to go to any one of the shows. It was like maybe one house show every 2 or 3 years. We would be able to go to that. So the only television that we could see would be on television, and you know uh, it sucked because Hogan wouldn't even appear on television. Maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks for a promo or something like that. But that's it. That's about it. So it was a real
See, from that standpoint, I understand, but from a business standpoint, I understand not having him on because that's what made such. It also made it kind of more special when he did show up on TV because you didn't see him. Like, I remember when they did. What pay per view was it? No, actually, it wasn't a pay per view. It was the Royal Rumble. They had Hogan show up. It was in 1988, the first ever Royal Rumble, which was on free TV on USA Network. And Hogan showed up to do the contract signing with Andre the Giant. That they were going to have this big match coming up that was not even going to be on pay per view. The match was going to take place on free TV on the brand new debuting show that was not Saturday Night's main event. It was just called the main event, and it came on Friday nights.
mm-hmm,
A lot of people mix those shows up all the time, including myself. But it was the brand new show that was coming, and the main event was going to be Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant for the World Heavyweight Championship.
mm-hmm.
The rematch from WrestleMania 3. We'd seen it teased at Survivor Series, and now it was going to happen. And they signed a contract with the Royal Rumble. A lot of people tuned into that Royal Rumble show. Hogan and Andre, a lot of people forget this. Nobody knew what the Royal Rumble was. It was brand new. Nobody knew what it was. And what sold it for people to watch was the fact that here's Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant appearing on free TV. You have to see this. And we'll talk another day about the clashes and all that stuff while they went up against things. Because this went up against the WCW pay-per-view when they did this. And that was why they did it in the first place, was to go up against WCW. But again, like I said, we'll save that discussion for another day.
Mm-hmm.
But this was huge that you were going to see Hulk Hogan and Andre Giant on TV signing this. All they're doing is signing a contract, but everybody tuned in to see it, and that's why they put it right before the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble came after that, the match, because they figured this way, everybody's already still watching. Now let's show them this new match to debut this new concept, and it was a brilliant marketing plan. But had you seen Hulk Hogan and Andre Giant every week on TV, you wouldn't have had that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh no, I know I can agree on that. I can agree on that, but I'm not even saying we're with Hogan and Andre whatever every day on TV. But it's like at the time, at the time, okay, I understand again years later, I understand the business aspect of it as well. But again, it's I think if Hogan would have wrestled on TV, let's say once a month, that made it a little bit extra special for the people that couldn't go to a house show, for the people that that can't even afford a pay per view, because we were barely able to we weren't even able to pay for a pay per view. We would go to my uncle's house, and two of my uncles and my dad would ship in for the pay per view. You know, but what it would have done is that by adding Hogan in at least one match, on TV during the month, it, you know, it would have made it that extra special to where, uh, okay, even if he didn't wrestle and he didn't put the belt on the line. You remember on that one Superstars where Hogan just showed up for a promo, and here comes Earthquake, and he does that butt splash on him, and
The
Hogan,
Quake.
yeah, right. You remember that, next thing you know, you had Tugboat on the next week's Superstar, say, hey, look, Hogan is gonna be okay. Write to him letters, telling him that they support him, blah 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 blah. That did more, and I was actually looking at some numbers. Not that long ago. That did more for ratings. That did more for ratings,
What?
and as
Go on.
well as made McMahon a little bit more money.
That's actually why Saturday Night's Main Event took off when it was on the air. Saturday Night's Main Event, a lot of people forget, but it was on during the off season of Saturday Night Live, was why they put it on, and it was drawing bigger numbers than Saturday Night Live was drawing, and the reason was because they had Hulk Hogan. You would see Hulk Hogan defend the title against Paul Orndorff in a steel cage match, which sadly that never ever had its finish. And we'll talk about this another time too. Once WrestleMania season comes, maybe we'll talk about WrestleMania stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But WrestleMania 3, I guess the backup plan, if Andre couldn't go because of the surgery, they were going to have Hogan versus Paul Orndorff as the main event to try and finish that. And then when that didn't happen and Hogan wrestled Andre, we never got the payoff for the Paul Orndorff match. But that Saturday Night's Main Event match drew. And then Hogan defended it in a cage against Big Boss Man on Saturday Night's Main Event. And, of course, there was the Saturday Night's Main Event that a lot of people forget, where Hulk Hogan had probably the greatest match he had in his entire WWF career when he defended the title against Terry Funk on Saturday Night's Main Event.
Now, what channel was Saturday Night? I mean, it was on NBC, right?
NBC, same as Saturday Night Live. It was from Saturday Night Live's producer, Dick Ebersol.
Yeah, because it's like again, I gotta go back. To where okay, again, someone like me, we weren't allowed to be up after a certain time.
Oh, I wasn't either. That's why they had VCR tapes. My parents would tape it, and I'd watch it the next day.
Yeah, we did have a VCR at the time.
Like I watched the heck out of the tape from the show I was bringing up, the main event, and not the Saturday Night's Main Event, the main event, the new show that debuted on Friday nights, and the main event was Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, which they'd signed the contract at the Royal Rumble, and this was a huge night because Hulk Hogan had held the title for nearly 4 years at this point. Because remember, a year earlier, Andre in the famous promo, 3 years to be a champion. It's a long time. Because Hogan had won the title on January 23rd, 1984. And now we're in January. Actually, it was over 4 years because it was February, actually. I think it was February 5th. I'm not looking at it right now. I'm going by memory. But I believe it was February 5th, 1988, on Friday night, the main event, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. That's the infamous 2 Dave Hebners. And they cheated Hulk Hogan out of the World Heavyweight title. Andre became the champion, held it for about 10 seconds, and handed it to Ted DiBiase right there that night. And everybody's mouths just hit the floor as what just happened. And then, of course, Jack Tunney would make the decision. The title means too much to just be handed off to somebody, and therefore he was taking it away, and he was going to put it up in as the prize for a tournament that would take place at WrestleMania 8.
No, I just think in
Or
general,
I'm sorry, WrestleMania 4. I'm
yeah.
sorry, 1988. That's where I got thrown off. 1988, but it was
Right.
WrestleMania 4. Don't cringe me or don't lynch me on that one.
No, I just think in general, sir, I think even now, going back and thinking about it, certain things could have been done differently. Um, yeah, again, on a business side and with, like I said, I can see it, but at the same time, I could also see it another different way.
Well, like I
And
said, also not just the business side, but the fact that it meant more when you would see the title defended. Like I hate the fact that the title is defended pretty much every single week now. I hate that. I don't mind. I get what you're saying about having the champion show up. They should have had Hogan show up for promos all the time.
no, yeah, no,
They could have had
you know,
they
if,
could have had Hogan come in to sell promos for the house shows.
no, no, and that's
He
the
could have.
no, yeah, no, and that was the thing because the whole thing is that when Hogan being the champion, right? Okay, you got a popular champion. You got a popular champion. People they're gonna go to a show to see the champion, and okay, what was the TV tapings at the time? Whether it was Saturday night or whatever,
Back then was the Wrestling Classic. I think was on the air already, and they had WWF Superstars. They had All American Wrestling,
yeah, no,
and
no, but I'm saying with superstars on the WWS level, what did they do? They all the TV tapings, all it really was just a house show that they added an extra flair
oh
to
yeah,
it.
well they would do that with all of them. They would pre-tape because this was during the syndication years,
Well, I mean,
and they would tape all their shows the same night.
well, no,
They even did that for pay-per-view
yeah,
when they did the No Holds Barred, the match, the movie. That was from a house show. That match.
yeah, and it was really unfortunate in my opinion. Again, going back to when I was able to go to house shows, right? It was unfortunate that whenever I went to a house show at the Civic Center, they didn't pick that night to do a TV taping or whatever. But it was just everything was based off of house shows before McMahon actually started started when he created Raw, when it was like live, and before
Well,
before
even after Raw started, they still kept that formula though. Because my first live WWF event that I had gone to was May 16th, 1995, and it was a house show, but it was also known as a WWF Superstars taping, and they taped tons of matches, and then they aired them out of order. Like some of the matches would air different weeks. They basically took some of the matches and mixed them with matches from other house shows that they had taped around that time, and they put together three different broadcasts. Because I actually have a tape of the broadcasts from those 3 weeks, and you see some matches from what I saw, but and then they're mixed with matches from another house show. They just threw stuff together to make their shows.
Yeah, no, but I was just no. My point was is that because of the fact that Hogan wasn't defending the belt on any of the tapings, right? It would be. My point was is that okay, you go to a taping, you go to a TV taping. It was more than likely Hogan was not going to be there that night.
Yeah, the TV tapings. They did
And
also with Hogan. Hogan's the only one I can think of that they did this. Maybe you can correct this, but Hogan, they had the deal. They were trying to get their Coliseum videos to sell, so they did this deal where they taped Hulk Hogan title matches at house shows exclusively for a line of VHS tapes that they put out. They put out a whole series. I think there was 5 of them in the series, maybe more, but they were called Hulkamania,
yeah, I
and
I used to have it.
they were just house show matches that you didn't see, but Hogan was defending the title in these. There was Hulkamania 1, Hulkamania 2, Hulkamania 3, Hulkamania 4, and then they even put out one called the Real American Hulk Hogan. So they were doing a whole VHS tape library of matches you were not seeing that were Coliseum home video exclusives, and they were taped at house shows. In fact, I know one other match that's a huge deal that I always thought, I can't believe they gave this as a exclusive for Coliseum Video, and it wasn't on television, was when Bret Hart won his first ever World Heavyweight Championship.
Hmm.
He wrestled Ric Flair and won the title. It was not on TV. It was taped at a house show, and it was put as a Coliseum Video home exclusive. And I thought, wow, that's weird because now he's going to show up on Raw the next week and he's got the title and nobody knows how he won it.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's the thing is that with all of that, it's like whether you were the fan going to a house show or whatever, you're the fan that can only see it on TV, or you're a fan that that you are able to buy the VHS tapes or whatever. It's like there's a lot of inconsistencies, and on a business standpoint, just going back to it and whatever. It's like what is it when you go to a wrestling event? You go to you want to see the champion. You want to see something. It's like you're excited for something,
Absolutely.
and then you're excited, and then you get disappointed because you didn't see the champion, or it's something didn't add up. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of different inconsistencies, and you just couldn't especially it didn't matter what bracket you're in, whether you're the poor fan or you're the okay fan or you're the well-off fan. There are certain inconsistencies, and then it's like, well, what's the point of going to a house show, or what's the point or whatever if I'm not gonna see who I want to see, or if I'm not gonna or if it's not gonna make sense. They're just like you see that now where at least now with today's house shows, ever since they revamped it a couple of years ago, there is the possibility, because now they have cameras at the house shows for the different, trons, right? That they'll do. At least, there's the benefit. Hey, look, it might be on TV or it might be on the network or it might, they actually done a lot better since back then. I mean,
Well, you got to remember too. This was during the real changeover because, like I said, in the older days, they didn't even have the television shows, so it was all house shows that you would see these matches take place. So they were kind of like, and WWF especially, they would tape their one show to air on television, and it would be airing the same night that WWF was running two more shows. They'd be running a show with Team A, which would usually have Hogan on it. They'd be doing a show in Chicago, while at the exact same time, a show is airing on the USA Network that had been taped a week in advance. And then there's a show airing, like, say, out in Peoria, Illinois, and on the exact same night at the same time, and it's headlined by Randy Savage. So they were just trying to do everything they could to make all the possible money they could in one night, which goes back to Vince's greed.
yeah.
But as far as the VHS tapes goes, it's like the old territory days. Before AWA landed the deal with ESPN, they would only do tapes, and they would put these out to show you who their guys were. Like, and the cool thing about those tape lines were because AWA had to deal with oh man, I can't think of the name of the Renco. Renco was making their action figures for the AWA guys, and as a bonus, they would put out the action figures, and you would get a VHS tape all about the guy that you're buying a tape of. So, like, back in the day, we bought a tape that came with what I don't remember which figure it came with, but they had one tape that was all about Vern Gagne, but ironically, it didn't come with a Vern Gagne figure. Yeah. But we bought these days, I hate to mention because we're going to talk about it later, but we bought the Road Warriors action figures, and they came with a tape of the Road Warriors that was called The Road to the Titles, and it just featured Road Warriors beating Sergeant Slaughter and Dick Murdoch in the tag team action, and just going up against all the different guys of their tag team division. It would be just one bloodbath after another you were watching of them beating these guys, leading to their title match. And then the tape would end at the end by promoting that you could purchase the next tape, which would feature the title match happening. So they would basically be doing what television was doing every week to segue and set up these big matches. They'd be using these tapes that came with an action figure to make you get a taste of it, to actually spend money to buy their tapes. Because I don't know if you remember, and our younger listeners are not even knowing what we mean when we say VHS. They're like, what the heck is VHS?
Right.
But VHS tapes were not cheap. Nobody really was buying them. even the VCRs were very expensive. You usually would buy a VCR and then you would go to your local video store and hope that they had wrestling tapes and you would rent them. That's actually how I seen all the Hulkamanias and all. We would rent these tapes because it was like $8 or something at the time to rent the tape. You could even rent the VCR because a lot of people couldn't afford the VCR. So you would rent the VCR and rent the tapes, because in the old wrestling magazines, and I have a lot of the old wrestling magazines, even there's ads for these tapes. These tapes ran about $49.95.
Yep.
Some of these VHS tapes, and they were only 60 minutes long. Some of them.
Yep.
So it was insane the way that the marketing of the business was, and it was there. People were. But like I said, the ones who were buying the tapes was the video stores, and then you would go to the video store and you'd pay $5 to $8 to rent the video, and you'd bring it home and watch it, and that's how you got to know what was going on in the wrestling world, other than just buying magazines and reading about it.
Yeah, no,
because like you said, a lot of people couldn't afford to go to the shows every week.
The crazy thing about that is that because you mentioned it earlier with the tape traders and everything, right? At some point, we got a VCR. I think it was a gift from either my grandparents on my mom's side or one of my uncles on my dad's side. We were get a couple VCRs, and my uncle, because we were always because like I said, we would go to his house. We would go to one of my uncle's houses. It was either my Uncle Juan or my Uncle Hector. And they would chip in, and rent the pay-per-view, and my uncle would record it. Then he'll make us copies, and then and when we were able to get a VCR, we were getting the copies of the pay-per-views, and then it was really cool. It was really cool that that when I got into the whole tape trading thing, it started with me because I had all the different pay-per-views. So then what would happen is that like I would in the garbage, I would go through the garbage in my neighborhood, and people were throwing out different VHS tapes. All I did is just I erased it and taped over it the pay-per-views, and somebody would give me a copy. In the hood, we had to be really really creative. So somebody would give me a copy of something that was going on the WCW or another promotion or whatever, and I would give them copies of WWF stuff. And then if somebody asked me, hey, do you have a copy of this? Then I would just make a copy. Again, in the hood, you got to be creative. So I would go into the trash, get all these.
Yeah, we had people or my dad's friends at all, because we would get like in '92 we ordered the Royal Rumble. And watch Ric Flair win the world title, and then we couldn't afford WrestleMania. So he was like, well, I didn't get the Royal Rumble, so if you give me a copy of the Royal Rumble, I'll order WrestleMania, and I'll get you a copy of WrestleMania. So to me, that was the start of tape trading, was just locally with friends. Like, we would always get the NWA pay-per-views in the 80s, and somebody else would get the WWF ones, and we would trade off. And then, then when I started going to shows and seeing all these tape traders and the tapes they had, it was like a kid in a candy store. You'd see all these things you'd never even heard of from Japan and everything, and oh my god, you would just like be watching hours and hours of wrestling on tapes, and it was just the greatest thing. And the kids today, they don't know what that's like, and they never will. And I mean, yeah, it's kind of convenient, it's on the network, but at the same time it's edited and it's just not the same, and you don't get that feeling you got like going and finding somebody who actually had the show, and you were like, oh my god, I've been looking for this show forever. And it's exciting to finally find it. Whereas now, if I want to find it, I just go and search on the network. It's just not the same.
I think one of the most exciting parts is, at least with today's technology, if you go on YouTube, because even back then, like somebody was trying to sneak in a video camera into the arena to record a house show or something.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the most famous one, and Vince actually uses the footage to this day, the curtain call.
Yeah.
Vince didn't have a tape there. He wasn't recording.
No, yeah.
That was a fan.
No, yeah, and so it's like you're able, like with YouTube, you're able to find things out. Like, okay, like WCW never ever recorded any of their house shows. WCW never recorded any of their house shows because
And if you've seen their house shows, you understand why.
yeah, but my first experience with WCW was when WCW started when they when TBS started doing WCW shows, right? When what whatever show it was, and then you got Nitro and Thunder and all that stuff.
Well,
But
TBS was always doing WCW shows because they took over that from the Crockett's at 605 Live on Saturday nights.
yeah, but you remember that it was a pre-established show, whether it was in a studio or an arena. I mean, they had an entranceway. They had there it was already established where it was a show. So one of the things I was like, I wonder how it looks I wonder how WCW looks at our show. And then as I'm when I'm hearing different interviews about how WCW worked and all of that, it was just one of those things where for me, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I started trying to see if somebody put any, if they, they recorded any of the WCW house shows and put it online. I was able to find a few videos. So it was just like, you can imagine, at the time, you know, uh, when I was a kid, I was like, I wonder if anybody has tapes of WCW, but nobody had tapes of WCW, from house shows or anything. So it's like,
Because you didn't know me.
well, not at the time. But that would have been cool to have. That would have been cool to have. It's like,
Yeah,
like,
because I grew up, we watched both, but my dad was huge into the NWA. His friends were in the NWA.
mm-hmm,
My brother liked the NWA. Like, I mentioned the Clashes, and like I said, eventually that'd be a fun episode to talk about, like, the Clashes and stuff. But when the Clash of Champions was up against WrestleManias, like, I remember WrestleMania 5 especially, I was in one room at first watching WrestleMania 5, and my dad and my brother were in the other room watching the Clash of Champions. And the big main event came up with Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat that night.
mm-hmm.
And I didn't even watch Hogan and Savage because I was too into Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat the same night.
I mean,
It was huge.
No, and I'll tell you both. Both Steamboat and Steamboat and Flair, and I mean, it was just there's some of the best decorated wrestlers in the world. I mean, they had some of the greatest programs out there, and and it's a shame that a lot of people, especially these younger kids, they're not good, unless they see it on the network or they go on YouTube, whatever. They're not really gonna know about it. They're not really gonna know about it. At the Broadways that guys like Steamboat and Flair had. It was just like,
Yeah, like everybody talked about the Iron Man with Brett and Sean, and I think I said this before too, but on this show, I think I did mention it, not in this episode, but I find that match very boring.
Yeah,
because all they did was rest hold at the rest hold. See. But then you go back and you watch Steamboat and Flair's hour-long Broadways, or you watch Flair and Barry Windham, Flair and Luke. Anyway, Flair went an hour, it was going to be good. And the reason was, yeah, they did rest holds. You have to.
of course.
And I get it, because you get too tired. But they spread it out. They did action, then rest hold. Action, then rest hold. You're spreading it out. Whereas Brett and Sean, for like the first 45 minutes, I think that actually, let me rephrase that a bit. Like the first 10 to 15 minutes of that match is pretty good. And then it just went to rest holds for like a half hour.
Yep.
And it was just boring.
It was like,
and the crowd was getting restless.
It was like a headlock
and it's just
here.
like, what are we watching?
Exactly. Like
and then they got the action going, and it was to the point where now you pretty much have to keep the action going the whole match. And this is when they did the spot where the super kick to Tony Chimel and all happened. And it was like, wow, now we're getting the excitement finally after a half hour of boringness. But then they went right back to the rest holds. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. And then they're waiting for that spot to happen for them to be running out of time. And when there's like 2 minutes left, then it starts getting exciting. And then Brett puts him in the sharpshooter. And even though it's a rest hold, it was exciting because the time's running out. Sean going to tap. Is he going to tap? And then the time runs out. And it just felt like a ripoff. Whereas the Broadways would Flair in them, yeah, you wouldn't get a winner most of the time. It would go to a draw. But you felt satisfied. And a great example of that, again, we're
No,
going to
I
talk more
agree.
about Clash definitely because
No.
Clash is going to keep coming up.
Oh yeah.
But the first Clash of Champions, which
Yep.
went up against WrestleMania 4,
Yep.
the main event, Sting and Ric Flair, it went almost a full hour,
Mm-hmm.
and Flair didn't lose the belt. Sting was still the champion, or I mean, Sting was not champion. Flair was still the champion, but they put on such an exciting match in that time. It not only entertained you, it made the basically unknown Sting into a star because Sting at the time was just starting to gain some popularity.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people even questioned why the first Clash wasn't Luger versus Flair because that's the feud that was going on at the time, even. And Sting was not even in the title picture.
Mm-hmm.
But after that match, Sting was in the title picture, which is what I mean about titles, how it can just make or break a career. Just having a title match with Ric Flair made Sting's career, and
No,
Sting was a star from that moment on.
no, and you know, and the facts are is that it's like once you know, okay, you know, Ric Flair, you know, and if we're gonna be totally honest, Ric Flair is what is like the best, if not the best, one of the best wrestlers out there. He is the most decorated champion ever. You know, from the NW. I mean, come on now. And then
Well, we're
anybody.
gonna get into decorated champions in a little bit, but yeah, keep going.
But but anybody that had a match with him, even if it was like a 5 minute thing, it's like the match. You know, it really got you hooked into it. You know, even if it was just a 5 minute match, you know, it really got you hooked into it. As we, you know, as we, you know about Ric Flair's promos, he just gets you hooked into it. It didn't matter. He could have, you know, I mean, you know, he could have just been, you know, taking off his clothes, talking about how he's, he's, jet flying, limousine riding, you know what I mean, all of that, and you know, it just got you hooked. It got you hooked. It got you hooked. And so when
Ric
you,
Flair was the champion of
yes,
champions,
and
and
you,
to me, he made that title look the old NWA title before the big gold belt.
mm,
I always remember that belt, which ended up being the first ever NWA TNA title as well.
mm,
And I actually got to hold that belt when I met Jeff Jarrett. I was so excited to hold that belt because
10 pounds of
that
gold.
belt to me is my belt. If I'm talking about all the titles out there, like my brother and I had replicas of the old AWA title, and my brother always loved the Winged Eagle WWE title, and I bought him a replica of that. But to me, the best belt of all time was that NWA title. That was the title that was the world title, in my opinion, because yeah, the WWF title was called the world title, but they didn't defend it everywhere.
Exactly.
It was a WWF title, but the NWA title was defended everywhere. Flair went to every territory. He went and lost the title to Kerry Von Erich, not at a show for the NWA. It was a World Class Championship Wrestling show that he lost the title.
And not to mention,
and then Kerry became part of the NWA because of that, and would go on to defend the title everywhere, including at the Super Clash when he defended against Jerry Lawler.
Yep. And don't forget, he also went to different countries with that. The NWA.
Yeah, I was going to get into that. They went to Japan. They went to Mexico. They went everywhere with this title, and that's why, to me, that was the title. Everybody talking about what the world title was. That was the world title.
Didn't Flair bring it to him with the big match with Antonio Inoki that was supposed to happen in like North Korea?
What was it, Inoki or was it Fujinami?
Hold on, I can look that up.
I thought it was Tatsumi Fujinami.
Hold on. Let me look it up real quick. Rick
Inoki had the big match with Muhammad Ali. I think it was Tatsumi Fujinami that had the big match with Flair because they had the rematch at, I think it was Wrestle War 92 or Beach Blast 92. Actually, it couldn't have been 92 because Flair was in WWE in 92.
Maybe
it was 91.
No, it was Antonio Inoki.
Okay, it was Inoki. Okay.
Yeah, because Antonio.
I know he had some kind of big match with Fujinami too. There.
Yeah, he did. But the one in Korea, the one in North Korea was Antonio Inoki because Antonio Inoki, even though he's Japanese, but he was trained by what's the guy that came from North Korea? he moved out of North Korea to Japan to become a sumo wrestler. And then he left sumo wrestling to become and he went to the States to learn professional wrestling. And he's the one that invented strong style.
You got me here. I'm stumped. I know who you're talking about, but I can't
But
think
yeah,
of who it
yeah, but
is.
he was Antonio Inoki's trainer.
I know. I can't think of who
And
he is right
yeah,
now.
so the whole point with that is that the North, the North Koreans, they accepted Antonio Inoki because he was a protege of their guy. And Antonio Inoki, he was the promoter. He was the main promoter of that. He was the one that was trying to bring
Yeah, he ran New Japan Pro Wrestling,
yeah.
and Giant Baba ran All Japan Pro Wrestling. Or am I inverting that?
I think you're right. I think you're right on that.
Okay, I always get the Japanese promotions mixed up.
Yeah, no, it was just Rikido-san is the guy from North Korea.
Right. That's it. Okay.
Yeah. No, no, but he went all over the place. Ric Flair went all over the place. I mean, okay,
The
WW,
NWA guys in general did, because
yeah,
when they did all those NWA crossovers
yep,
before the WCW, I'm not talking about WCW New Japan Pro Wrestling Super Shows, which also did that, but NWA went over to Japan, and that's actually an interesting story because Sting had seen Ricky Choshu. Ricky Choshu, was that his name, or was that his name? Ricky Choshu? I can't think of his name right now. I think it was Ricky Choshu.
yeah,
Um, he was doing the sharpshooter um, hold that Sting borrowed and turned into the Scorpion Deathlock.
hmm
And Bret Hart saw it, and he actually created the sharpshooter after it. And Bret's admitted that he got it from Sting, and Sting admitted he got it from Ricky Choshu.
yeah, because
So,
he saw Ricky Chosu. I think he defeated Tatsumi Fujinami, and he used it against him.
wow, there's some fun. There's some fun trivia.
Yeah, I'm just
Just talking about Fujinami.
yeah. No, but it's just
Fujinami, by the way, is famous for creating that famous armbar, the Fujinami armbar.
yep, yep.
So all those Japanese guys, they were creating holds like I forget who it was that created the GTS, and WWE actually signed him afterwards to NXT after Punk left.
hmm
The guy who invented it. Why can't I remember his name? But yeah, all these Japanese guys were the ones inventing these holds, and then these Americans would go over there and see them, and they would come back and they would, let's just use the word borrow.
Kenta, wasn't it? Wasn't it Kenta?
Was it? No, it was Hideo Itami, I think was his name, right? Is that how
Yeah,
you pronounce it?
yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was the creator of the GTS,
Yep.
and Punk took it,
No,
made it his own. It,
no, but it's crazy because even okay, professional wrestling started in the States. Okay, it started here in the United States. Mexico, took professional wrestling to a whole different level to include, to include their mythologies, to include their religious, to include everything, right? Japan took it to a whole different level. It's like it's one thing, but it got it's a whole drastic of how they make it their own. When Japan took it, or you could even say North Korea because it was a North Korean that uh, pretty much excelled at it. But it's it,
I remember this old documentary that came out around 97, 98,
yep,
called The Unraveled Story of Professional Wrestling.
yep,
Um, and they had talked about that pro wrestling originated in the United States as a way to take amateur wrestling but make it carny
yep.
to raise money as fundraisers.
Mm,
And that's why Abe Lincoln took place in it. Abe
yep,
Lincoln's always known as this professional wrestler. A lot of people know that. A lot of people found out don't know that story. But Abe Lincoln, yeah, was a pro wrestler.
yep. He was.
And he was doing it because he knew it would sell tickets,
Yep.
because everybody wants to see Abe Lincoln.
Yeah.
So he got involved.
I
But
actually,
that,
in the 11th grade of high school in my history class, I was doing a big presentation on professional wrestling, and when I mentioned that Abe Lincoln was a professional wrestler, my history teacher. She's like, wait a minute, what? I said, yeah, he was, and I said, but I listed everything out. I listed everything out, and and she was like, no, yep. I had to give her my sources to show her that it was true.
Well, nobody knows if this one's true or not, but there was the rumor that Abe Lincoln's first match was with a bear, and it's possible because a lot of people go, "Oh no, nobody wrestles a bear." And I'm not talking about boxing Joe Grizzly. There's a plug, but they
Actually,
no
I actually mentioned that to Mikey a couple months ago.
oh boy, I'm sure he wasn't happy about that talk.
No, actually,
um,
he was laughing it off. He was laughing it off, and he was like, "Yeah, that's who
I
stink."
still remember when he did a podcast before talking about his worst moment in wrestling, and he didn't even mention breaking his arm with Billy Kidman. He mentioned the bear, and I went, "Oh my god!"
Well, yeah, going
But
back.
yeah. So pro wrestling in the states went to the carnivals
Yep.
and started taking place at the local carnivals, and they would let guys get into the cages with the bears and fight the bears and everything to draw tickets for the carnival, and that's actually how the first gimmicks of wrestling did not come from Vince McMahon like he tries to take credit. They actually came from the carnivals
Yep.
because the carnies, the guy running the carnival, said, you know what would sell tickets? People love my freak shows because the freak shows, they're no longer a thing. They're no longer politically correct,
Mhm.
but they were around at every carnival where you
Mhm.
could pay money to see people that looked weird
Mhm.
or had a weird deformity. And the carnival guy went, hey, you know what? If that's selling tickets to my carnival, how about if I put those guys in the ring? And so the freak show guys started getting in the ring with each other. And that
Mhm.
was the origination of how midget wrestling started,
Mhm.
women's wrestling started, all the gimmicks that you know today. Like everybody wants to talk about the women's revolution. The women's revolution, the first ever women's wrestlers were bearded ladies at a carnival.
Mhm.
And
I mean,
this is
and don't
before
forget,
fabulous Moolah days.
also that they would invite all the local tough men,
Yeah,
to
that was another thing. They would pick out guys in a crowd. Like there's those two guys, I can't think of their names, but the famous fat guys. They're always they're from that famous image of them with the
with it.
hats and the leather jackets and they got the sunglasses sitting
Yeah.
on the motorcycles, the two twins.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were brought to all the shows sitting in the crowd and the promoter would come in the ring at the carnival and be like, who wants to step in the ring with my upcoming battle and try to win? And those two guys would get in the ring and then they would challenge other people in the crowd to try and face them. And of course, they weren't going to beat those big guys.
Yeah.
And then
I,
that was actually how Haystacks Calhoun got in because
yeah.
Haystacks was at one of these carnivals as an attraction. Come
Mhm.
and see the big man, Haystacks Calhoun. And then he would get in the ring
Yeah.
and
And at the
it's
time,
crazy to think about, but
at the time too, you got to remember when it started. Uh, this was also before a lot of before a lot of it before everything just became a work. Sometimes
oh yeah, a lot of this
it,
stuff
it,
was
it was a shoot.
legit. They were
Yeah,
going at it.
yeah, it was a shoot. And then and then afterwards they were like, hey, they basically all came together. Like all the wrestlers, they all came together. They were like, hey, look, we're getting hurt, this, that, and the other. I mean, and the crowds aren't coming anymore because it's taking too long. So then that's when they started doing the time limits. And they started doing
Right,
the
and
time
working
limits.
in more gimmicks to try and draw people in.
Yeah, and
And a
they
lot of
start.
that was actually seen in the film Body Slam, which I'm going to be reviewing eventually on at the movies.
Mhm.
Not trying to plug that, but no, where they have the scene where the big guy they pick him out of the crowd to get in the ring with Rick Roberts, played by Roddy Piper, and all, and
Mhm.
he just sits on Piper, so Piper can't do anything, and then Piper's like, "Do sign." They're like, "I know, we should sign this guy." He goes, "Get serious." But that's what would happen. They would sign these guys right out of the crowd, and Vince actually used the technique as a gimmick to debut certain guys, like Hillbilly Jim debuted out of a crowd, and Earthquake debuted out of a crowd. Earthquake was a funny one because he was just a big guy they picked from the crowd to come and sit on Dino Bravo doing push-ups.
Mhm.
And again, they did it even years later with Santino Marella when they
Mhm.
did a show
With the Sultan.
somewhere,
It was
and
in.
he got in the ring to have a match, and he won the title.
I think it was in Germany.
And it was in another country. I can't remember. I thought it was Spain, but who
No,
knows?
no, I think it was. I think it was Germany.
Possibly. I thought it was Spain, or even Italy, but I don't know. But they did these gimmicks, and that was how American wrestling went. We went the carny route on it, whereas in Mexico, pro wrestling went the circus route instead of the carnivals. They started having wrestling at the circus, and
And
that's
they
actually where
and that's how they would use their high flyers and all of that because of
that's actually where the term the ring came from.
mhm.
A lot of people don't realize the ring came from the Mexican circuit because you had the three ring circus,
Mhm.
and they would have the ring, and
Well, also
the
it
was
also
where
but it
they would
also
all take what?
no it also is also from amateur wrestling because in amateur wrestling, it would be a circle, a ring on the floor. It was a mix of both.
Okay, well, you're teaching me something. 'Cause I always heard it was from the Mexican circuit with the circus acts that they did.
Yeah, no, in amateur wrestling,
But yeah, like the luchadors, all that stuff, it was part of the circus because you would go to see the flying trapeze guys, and then you would see the flying guys in the ring. They were
yeah,
flying around the ring. They didn't need the wires and and the ropes, and people
yeah,
were just like amazed by it. And
yeah,
that was how Mexican wrestling started.
and it wasn't until what the 40s or the 50s where when they started using boxing rings to wrestle in instead of just like a
I think.
platform or something.
Well, the reason for that was because they actually had mixed shows.
Hmm.
You would go to a show and you would see boxing matches and wrestling matches on the same show.
Hmm.
That was why they mixed the rings.
Yeah, no, and then it's crazy because there's a whole history behind the ring too, behind the boxing ring, and then eventually,
And then there was also where they would do boxing on Friday, wrestling on Saturday, all at the same arena. And so they would
actually,
change the ring.
actually over here in the town of Manchester at Cheney Hall, okay, there's a place called Cheney Hall, and they used to hold boxing events as well as when they did the mix of the boxing and the wrestling. And I remember when I started when I was trying to promote one of my first shows here in Manchester. I went to Cheney Hall and I told them, hey, I want to put on a wrestling event. And they were against it. And I was like, look, Cheney Hall has a history of doing wrestling and boxing. Why not now? But anyway, that's a whole different story for another day.
Yeah.
But
But
they
yeah,
did that over here.
last thing I'll say on the titles. But yeah, the guys were holding the titles for long periods of time,
Oh yeah.
and it made their careers. And it wasn't just a world title.
Hmm.
We're going to talk about this briefly because I want to get to the next segment because we're getting low on our time here. We're going long,
Hmm.
but like Rob Van Dam,
Hmm.
he was making the ECW World Television title mean more than the world title
Oh yeah.
because he held it for 2 years and he only lost it because he got injured and they stripped him of the title. And then like Lex Luger,
Hmm.
he was the longest reigning U.S. title holder, and he made the U.S. Championship mean just as much as Flair's world title. And it was such a big deal. And people, they don't really think about how much title can mean to somebody. Like we mentioned Brock Lesnar.
Hmm.
Brock Lesnar was champion for longer than CM Punk.
Mhm.
It's happened. He broke the record. But he didn't defend the belt.
Exactly.
He was defending it not even every month. It was every couple months he'd defend it.
And
Whereas
he
CM Punk was
and he
defending
didn't
the belt
even.
at house shows.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. If we're gonna, Brock Lesnar didn't even go to house shows. He didn't even,
He didn't even go to most of the TV shows.
No, exactly. And and going back to the Hogan thing, at least Hogan defended it at the house shows.
Like Hogan kind of caused Randy Savage to not defend the world title when Savage won it at WrestleMania 4
Hmm.
because Hogan didn't want him to defend it because he was afraid of Savage stealing his spot.
Hmm.
And that's why Hogan formed the Mega Powers.
Oh
And so every pay-per-view, instead of getting a world title match with Randy Savage, we were stuck getting a Mega Powers tag team match
yeah. Hmm.
so Hogan could stay in the main event picture even though he was off busy filming No Holds Barred.
Hmm.
But yeah, so the belts, they again though, it wasn't just the world title. Like I said, the TV title meant something in ECW with Rob Van Dam.
Mhm.
U.S. title with Lex Luger meant something. John Cena just a few years ago was making the U.S. title mean something when he was doing his U.S. title defenses against local wrestlers, and it actually was how they debuted Kevin Owens. They debuted Sami Zayn that way.
Mhm.
They were making the belt make the stars
Bret the
right
Hitman
off the
Hart,
bat.
Bret the Hitman Hart, even before he was in the world title picture, he was making the Intercontinental
Oh yeah,
Championship
Bret
like
Hart.
mean
As soon as he
something.
won that Intercontinental title from Mr. Perfect
Hmm.
at SummerSlam '91, that belt was meaning something. And then
Hmm.
Bret only, and then people forget, Bret was Intercontinental Champion for 1 year.
Yep.
That's it. 1 year, people. Think about it. Do the math. He won it SummerSlam '91 from Mr. Perfect. He lost it SummerSlam '92 to British
British
Bulldog,
Bulldog in
and
in
Bulldog
the
then would
UK.
drop it to Shawn Michaels a couple of months later,
Mhm.
and Bret was into the world title picture. Bret was Intercontinental Champion for 1 year,
I
and
mean,
yet he's remembered as one of the greatest Intercontinental Champions of all time.
yep.
Why? Because he spent that year defending that title more than Hogan did in the 4 years that he was the world champion.
Exactly, exactly. When you're the champion, it doesn't matter who you are. If you make that belt mean something, it's gonna mean something. I mean, let's take today, right? You got the 24/7 championship with WWE. And yes, okay, it was built as just a gimmick, goofy thing, but our truth, he's made that belt mean something. You
Well, I
know,
wouldn't say that.
well, no, I do because it's like, okay, yeah, again, it's a comic relief thing, and let's be honest with ourselves, it's a comic relief thing. But if you think about it, you know, he's done more. He's done a lot with that, especially with
I
social
will
media
say
and
this.
Twitter.
Can I change your opinion if I explain my situation with it? That our truth didn't make the title mean something, but the title helped make our truth mean something.
I could say it's a little bit of both. I could say
Because I
it's
think our truth got it over, but if it was anybody else, the title wouldn't matter. Because look at when the title went to Rob Gronkowski.
no, but
Did
that's what
anybody care?
No, but that's what I'm saying is that it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. Our truth made it mean something because of what he's done with it with
Like
Twitter
Taz
and
with the FTW title.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But and you're right. Yeah, the title did help make our truth. Now, our truth was already a name in Impact. Our truth was a name in other promotions, but in WWE, they weren't using him as to his full potential. So what did he? So when he got the 24/7 championship, he took advantage of that, and he made something out of it. He made something out of it, and it made him relevant again because he has a belt now. You're gonna see him on Twitter or on Instagram or whatever. What you never know what he's doing with it. Whether it's something stupid, silly, whatever. But so I think it's a little bit of both where he made
It's
he
kind of
made the
like
title.
Crash Holly with the hardcore title,
Yeah.
even.
Oh yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
But again, it goes back to what I feel on it. It's just that it's helping the career of the guy. Because when you think of a hardcore title, you either think of Mick Foley
Or
or
Crash.
you think of Crash Holly. Those are the two main guys that most people. I know some people are going to say other names, but I'm saying the majority of people, if you did a survey, they would either mention Mick Foley or they're going to mention Crash Holly
Mm-hmm.
as a hardcore champion. Just like how, even though I felt he did a good run with it, I understand why. If you ask people about Rob Van Dam in WWE, his title run, they're all going to mention his title run when he beat John Cena for the WWE title and rechristened it the ECW title,
Mm-hmm.
even though it was only like a few weeks even that he had it.
Mm-hmm.
They remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, they don't remember his Intercontinental title run. And the reason for it was because they unified it with the hardcore title and the European title. They made all the belts unified,
Yep.
and then they just decide, hey, let's bring them all back. And
Yep.
it doesn't even make. At that point, I lost interest in them because it's like, okay, and people crap on Vince Russo for saying this, but Vince Russo is saying this because Vince McMahon made this happen. The titles now are a prop.
Oh yeah.
That's what they are. Russo calls them a prop, and everybody goes, no, they mean something. The belts don't mean anything anymore because WWE destroyed them.
Exactly.
How many times did they unify the world titles in their company to keep bringing back the they got the WCW title in there because they bought WCW. They had Jericho unify them,
Mm-hmm.
and then they got rid of those both belts and got a new belt that was supposed to symbolize both those belts.
Mm-hmm.
But then they decided to just keep that belt on SmackDown, and on Raw they brought out the world title again and gave it to Triple H. They handed it to him,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, first of all, that other belt's supposed to already be that belt because
Yep.
it's supposed to be both belts. So how are you just bringing back this belt?
Yep.
And I'm supposed to care. And then Chris Benoit, I'm not supposed to mention his name, but I'm mentioning it anyway. He comes in and we're supposed to believe that after he wins the Royal Rumble, he'd rather go after half that belt, after that belt, the same belt that Benoit won in WCW and threw down to go to WWF because he said that belt didn't matter to him. But now he's giving up the chance to go after the WWF title so he could go after that title again.
No, exactly.
It just makes no sense. The belts are props.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing that sucks about it. That's what sucks about it is that now they're just props. They don't mean a damn thing anymore. It's like,
no,
okay,
they don't.
cares?
And the only guy who ever really was trying to make it mean something, and he got crapped on while he did, was CM Punk.
Yep.
And then I'll never forget John Cena because I love the promo. It's my favorite. It actually, I would probably say it's my favorite promo in history. That's saying something, but I mean it because I rewatch it all the time. There was a promo leading up to Night of Champions 2012, John Cena versus CM Punk. Everybody hates the match. I love the match. Had a dusty finish, and that's why people don't like it. I love dusty finishes because they're old school. But the promo leading up to it, Bret Hart's in the ring, CM Punk's in the ring, and John Cena's in the ring. They're in Montreal, Canada, and John Cena makes this line that just kills the belt, in my opinion, when he says, "You think that you're a star because you have that. You have made that title meaningless because you don't main event." It's like, you're saying he's making the title meaningless because he's not in the main event. But rewind back to the 80s, Hogan wasn't always in the main event when he was the champion. Neither was Randy Savage. Neither was Ultimate Warrior. They weren't Royal Rumble 91 people. Ultimate Warrior losing the title to Sergeant Slaughter wasn't the main event. Title picture is not always the main event.
Exactly.
But John Cena tries to say the belt didn't mean anything because it's not in the main event anymore.
Exactly.
So, and yet John Cena's in the main event. So is John Cena saying he's bigger than the title and he means more than the title? Then why does he need the title?
Exactly.
And then you look at all the guys, again, that say Jake Roberts never held the title. To my opinion, to my knowledge, I can't think of any right now, but I don't think he's ever held any title.
Nope.
And he actually said recently in a interview with Chris Van Vliet that he didn't need the title. He didn't want the title because it's something heavy that you got to carry in your bags. And he goes, I already had to carry a snake around with me. Why would I need to carry a belt around with me?
Oh, yeah, no, I saw that interview just recently.
Yeah, it was great. I recommend people check that out. But the point is, Jake Roberts is remembered as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He didn't need the belt. Roddy Piper, he's held he actually held two. I didn't realize he won the tag titles, I guess, in 2003. And I didn't know this. This was news to me. But Roddy Piper held the tag titles later on. But he never held any other title. Even the WCW title, which I'll get to that in a second because I have to mention that, even though it's not totally related to this, but I got to mention it in a second because it's so funny. But he won the Intercontinental title, was the only title that he held. He won it at the 1992 Royal Rumble. And the reason was because Bret Hart needed that big push as the Intercontinental Champion. So they had their big match at WrestleMania 8, where Piper dropped the belt back to Bret after winning it from the Mountie at the Royal Rumble, after the Mountie cheated to win it from Bret at a house show. Back to titles at house shows. But then Piper goes to WCW and he challenges Hogan to a match at Starrcade 96, which in my opinion, and I know nobody else is going to agree, but in my opinion, that's the best match that those two ever had together at Starrcade 96. But the problem is Piper wins the match.
Yep.
And he doesn't win the title. And it's always bothered me because Piper never asked for the title to be on the line, which he didn't. And that's why they didn't put it on the line. But if you're going to make a statement You're coming in out of the WWE after being their commissioner, and you're supposedly trying to make a statement by dethroning this guy who came in to win this title, and you're not going to ask for a title shot at his title? I mean, I get that at the time Piper was saying, "Oh, I'm not part of WCW. I'm here just to beat you because I want to beat you." I get that, but then he stayed with the company after that, and they had the rematch and all at Super Brawl, aka the Alcatraz deal, and then all of a sudden it was for the title. So it's like,
Well, you got to
why
remember.
wasn't the Starcade match for the title?
Well, you got to remember with WCW, everything was a cluster F.
Yeah, I know, but it's just again, titles are props.
Yeah. No, and that's what
And it's
and that's
sad. I don't
yeah, it
want
is.
titles to be props because I care about the titles.
Exactly,
But they've made
exactly.
me not care anymore. I don't care anymore about titles.
But no, and I mean, even now with, let's say,
There's so
AEW.
many titles now, even.
Yeah, I mean, even now with AEW, it's like you just really can't care
None of
about
their
it.
titles will ever mean anything.
He's like, I mean, there, I can't say anything too positive about AEW when it comes to the titles.
Ted
It's like,
DiBiase's $1 million title means more than any AEW
well, I
title.
mean, I'll say this. I'll say this is that when it came down to the women's title, right? When damn, what's her name? Not
Nyla Rose.
Yeah, when Nyla Rose won it, okay, that they made some history having the first trans women champion for a
Transgender.
major promotion. For a major promotion, they made history. And someone who's been in the business, whatever. It's like I always I agree with Cody Rhodes that wrestling is for everybody. There's something for everybody. So when a lot of people when they were bitching and complaining about, and pardon my French, when they were complaining and about Nyla Rose winning the women's championship, it's like, to me again, number one, the fact that kayfabe is dead, and being involved in wrestling and knowing that.
Kayfabe is alive. He's living in Louisville, Kentucky, but he's being silenced.
All right. No, but
That's all I'm gonna say about that.
no, but what I gotta say is that I think having the first trans woman champion and for a major promotion, not I mean, there's been other trans women champions for the indies, but as far as like for a major promotion, having the first trans woman champion, making that sort of history, I think that kind of helped make the women's title mean something for a time. But again, but I don't know. When it came down to Nyla Rose being the champion, the only issue that I had is the fact that I didn't in my opinion she couldn't really work. In my opinion, she couldn't really work.
Oh no, she absolutely not.
You
My
know.
problem with Nyla Rose's champion wasn't the transgender thing. It was that the people complaining about it
Yep.
were the same people that had no issue with China being the Intercontinental Champion and the Women's Champion.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's another
They
thing
had
that I
no
have an
issue
issue
with
with.
it.
Yeah. No,
It,
that.
it there was no issue. Nobody complained whatsoever about a woman being the Intercontinental Champion when Jericho had his feud with China over the Intercontinental title.
Mhm.
Nobody was complaining, and yet these same people who didn't complain then now they're complaining about this, and I just don't get it.
Yeah. No, it's
It
just
makes sense.
and again and in going with because because you got a lot of people that they're, oh, it's a work, it's not real, blah blah blah, not knowing what really goes on behind the scenes and whatever. But but then they want to complain that a trans woman is a champion for a quote unquote fake sport. And that's what some, what I mean, for a fake fight, as some people would say in the wrestling community. uh and I'm like, okay, nobody, it's for some reason these are the fans that it doesn't matter what you do, they're never going to be happy. They're never going to be happy. You know what I mean? It's like they're gonna.
I mean, but yeah, like I said, to me, the titles they are what's supposed to matter.
Yeah.
I know they don't anymore, but like I said, even the NWA title,
Mm-hmm.
I said that was the title that always meant something to me. And in reality, Vince McMahon himself acknowledged that title meant more than any other title.
Mm-hmm.
Because just look at when Ric Flair left the NWA.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was WCW now, but it was still the same belt that he had.
Mm-hmm.
That was what the argument was because the NWA didn't want to give back the money that he had put the deposit on the belt because he's not even using their actual belt anymore. He's using the belt that WCW made, and WCW doesn't want to give him the money because they're not the ones that he gave the deposit to.
Mm-hmm.
So he took the belt with him, and he goes to WWE,
gives it to Vince.
and the difference here was, see, when Medusa shows up with the WWF title on WCW TV, Bischoff had her throw it in the garbage can.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get back to that in a second. I'm going to put that on pin because I have a story about that, what they did wrong there.
Yeah.
But back to Ric Flair, he shows up now in WWF, and they're calling him the real world champion.
Yep.
They're basically acknowledging that the NWA title means more.
Yep.
And right then and there, too, I'm just going to say this once because this is a whole nother argument, but how the heck do you have him come in as the real world champion while Hulk Hogan is the current WWF champion, and you don't have the two go up against each other title for title?
Thank you.
I don't get it.
Thank you.
You set it up yourself, and then you didn't do it?
Exactly.
It's like, what? I don't get it. Instead, they have Hogan lose the belt with all the stupid controversy at Survivor Series, with Flair getting involved, and then a week later, the whole thing where Hogan takes the urn and opens it up and throws the dirt into the eyes of the Undertaker, which kills the '94 angle where they opened the urn supposedly for the first time when the smoke came out. How come Hogan then had dirt? Not even ashes. The ashes are not black.
Exactly.
It was dirt. They put dirt in the urn. But then all this controversy going on, Jack Tunney just decides, I'm taking your title. Again, Jack Tunney loves taking that title from Hogan. But he takes the title again, just like they had in '88, and then they put it up in the Royal Rumble, and Flair wins the Royal Rumble. So now Flair's the WWF champion, and then he gives the promo that probably is the greatest promo any WWF champion ever gave that belt, when he said, "This means I'm the greatest." It's like, well, then how come when you came in, you just said that your other belt was the real world title? But
yeah, it's just,
what are you gonna?
Yeah, a lot of things just topsy turvy in that time.
But going back to Medusa, and then we're going to move on with this. But Medusa showing up with that title, she was promised they were going to build a whole women's division around her, which she was upset with the women's division in WWF, felt that it wasn't really doing good things. So how did they build this women's division around her, you ask? Well, did they create a WCW Women's Championship? No. They just put Medusa in matches. Let's just go back a second. In WWF, Medusa was Alundra Blaze, and she was the WWF Women's Champion, and she defended that belt against Bull Nakano and
Bertha Faye.
Bertha Faye, yes, and all these other women. When she came to WCW, who did she wrestle? Bull Nakano, Bertha Faye, now using the name Rhonda, but it's all the same exact girl she's wrestling with in WWF. And yet now there's no title involved. So here's what should have happened, and Bischoff, if he had been smart, he would have did this, but he's a freaking moron. That's why he does his podcast with Conrad. But I'm not gonna go into a whole rant on Conrad here, but let's just say the 83 weeks, yes, I'm plugging it, but and he named this show after how many times he won the ratings. There's an ego for you. But Bischoff, had he been smart, wouldn't have made more sense to have Medusa show up on Nitro and say, instead of throwing the belt in the garbage and saying, "This is what I think of the WWF Women's title," and then not becoming a champion in WCW, making herself look like an idiot that she'd rather have no title than any title. Wouldn't it have made more sense to show up on Nitro? They say, "What are you doing here?" And she goes, I'm the WWF Women's Champion, and this belt has meant nothing over there. So I am going to bring it here and rechristen it the WCW Women's Champion because I'm tired. You're all talking about this is where the big boys play. Well, now this is where the big girls play. I'm tired of playing with the little girls, and you're going to see what women's wrestling is when the big girls play it. And
I'm
then walk off still holding that title,
yeah.
not throwing it in the trash, and then show up next week with a brand new title that's dubbed the WCW Women's Champion.
Hmm.
And she's the champion recognized because she's carrying on the same legacy she already built. And this would also make sense why Bull Nakano and the girls from the other company are coming over.
Yep.
They say, we're big girls too, and we still want that title.
Now
And
you
now
remember you know what have
Vince
worked.
wouldn't be as mad because his belt would still mean something somewhat.
Yep.
And now you got a whole women's division built, and you might have been able to draw a new audience.
Now you know what would have worked with it as well is that you remember when Lance Storm when him and his team of Canadians when they were winning certain belts they won the television, they won the United States title, and they put like Canada stickers on it. So now this is
Canada flag, yeah.
yeah, right.
Well, he did that with the U.S. title because he redubbed it the Canadian title because it's U.S., so now
Yeah.
it's Canadian title.
Yeah,
And
but
then the hardcore title was the greatest one of all,
yeah.
and I give Vince Russo the credit on that one. I know Lance wasn't too happy about it, but I'm sorry, it was funny.
Mm.
He called it the Saskatchewan Hardcore International Title.
Yeah. But
SCHIT.
right. But no, but my point to it is that they could have like the first week she comes out, she could still have the title, but with the like a sticker, a WCW sticker or something until they made.
Oh
a new
yeah,
belt or
even that
something.
would have worked. Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
you know,
I
it's
mean,
like,
even do it the way that again you're using it. That's why I brought it up around that time frame
Mhm.
because it would have basically been what WWE had already done. You're using it against them. They
Yep.
took Ric Flair with the WCW title.
Yep.
Now you're taking Medusa,
With the
Larger
women.
Blaze, whatever you want to call her, with the WWF title, and she's saying she's the real women's champion, and that there is no women's division, and she's gonna christen it here. And so you're basically using the Ric Flair storyline with Medusa.
Yep.
She would have been a star right off the bat. You would have been like paying attention. Nobody would have gotten hurt. The title would have never got its lack of meaning. She would have still been showing that title meant something, and now she's just bringing it somewhere else
Mhm.
because it's now gone to a new level. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because WCW never did have a women's championship,
No, they didn't.
and their women's wrestling was always a joke, always. Like Bischoff's answer back to the Divas was to have the Nitro Girl cheerleaders,
Yep.
and and then they started making these cheerleaders wrestle, and it was even dumber because they weren't trained.
Exactly.
But how come they couldn't just say, hey, our answer to you not having real women's wrestling is we're going to have real women's wrestling?
Exactly. And so that way.
Wouldn't that be the answer back?
No, I agree because at the time McMahon was doing the pillow fights, the lingerie
the bra and
matches.
panties matches.
Yeah.
WCW's answer should not have been, hey, let's have cheerleaders dancing around. Let's have actual women's competitive matches.
Exactly. I mean, and they could have brought in a lot of great, female athletes. They could have brought in women from Mexico,
absolutely.
from Japan, from anywhere.
There was
here in the
women's
States.
wrestling everywhere they could have brought in, and a lot of these girls who went to WWF just because they didn't have anywhere else to go, they would have been more likely to come to WCW
Exactly.
and do that there.
Exactly.
Because, like, I don't think Lita would have gone to WWF if WCW had a legit business, because she admitted she was a huge WCW fan. She actually got in the business after she met Arn Anderson at a WCW event.
Yep.
So I think if WCW had an actual women's division, she would have been more keen to go there, and then these girls would have helped destroy WWF's ratings, and they may have actually won the war.
No, yeah, no,
See,
I
the
agree.
problem
The
was
ratings would definitely.
WCW felt that their ratings dropped, and this is going to be another show, but they felt their ratings dropped because they couldn't be edgy like WWE. They didn't have to be.
No.
They should have been the alternative.
No, exactly.
Instead, they tried to be the copycats.
I think in general, by being the alternative, they could have, and they could have been more sports based. You know what I mean? I mean,
Absolutely.
to have the storylines and all of that, but be competitive, show actual competition, not not an hour long monologue promo of why they went to the bathroom to use the facilities or whatever they were talking about. You know what I
Always
mean?
wondered what if instead of putting Vince Russo in charge like
Yep.
they did,
Hmm.
what if they had brought Jim Cornette back and put him in charge?
Oh, I think it would have been excellent. I think whatever.
Have Jim Cornette
Yeah.
going up against Vince Russo's carnival act up there in the WWF
Yep.
during the Attitude Era,
Yep.
and WCW would get more serious again
I
and just
think
have these
WC yeah
actual matches taking place. They
WCW
had the
would have.
talent.
Yeah, they did.
That's the sad part. They did. They had the talent.
WCW would have gone to a whole new other level with it.
I don't think that Vince would have stood a chance of staying on top against Jim Cornette's WCW.
Oh no, I agree.
Because maybe in the short term, but in the long term, let's face it, that Jerry Springer act got old fast.
No, yeah, I agree, and I agree. And the thing is that when it comes to this business that we both love, right? When it comes to this business, it's like, you know, there are certain things that make it great. There are certain things that just make it a joke. And if you would have had Jim against Vince, Vince Russo, you know, yeah, like you said, in the short term, okay, they would have gotten higher ratings, whatever. But with Jim Cornette, he thinks big picture. He thinks longevity. He thinks, you know, what's gonna, how is this gonna be a great show 3 or 4 or 5 years from now? And there's no
And we
way.
would never had all those stupid gimmicks like the West Texas Rednecks and everything that destroyed WCW's credibility because that's what
Marcus
Russo ruined in WCW. See,
Marcus
people
Bagwell's
they
mom.
say, "Oh, Russo, they killed WCW," and they're right, he didn't
Yep.
because the company was already sinking.
Yep.
But he sank it faster. He basically took a sledgehammer to a boat that had a couple holes in it already,
Yep.
and instead of patching the holes like he should have, he took a sledgehammer and made the holes bigger and made it sink faster.
Yep.
He caused more damage than he fixed,
Yep.
and that will never be proven wrong because that's the truth.
He did the same thing with Impact. He did the exact same thing with Impact.
And ironically, he was working alongside Jim Cornette for that, but unfortunately, Jim had no say, and that's why Jim quit.
Hmm. And the thing is,
Because the other one too.
Mhm.
Can you imagine if Dutch Mantel had been brought in too? Dutch Mantel and Jim Cornette running WCW together.
I think
They're-
Jim and Dutch, they would have saved anything that was already a wreck. They would have patched the hole. That they would have
Because Dutch
everything.
doesn't get enough credit for his booking style. The problem was Dutch went a long time over to Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
I think was it Puerto Rico or where was it?
Yeah, he was Puerto Rico
Yeah?
for a long time.
Okay, yeah. But when he was
worked with
there,
Carlos Colon,
it really hurt the American wrestling to lose Dutch for that long.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we talked about how the guys who
and for
had
those,
the title.
hold on, and for those who don't know Dutch Mantel, he's Uncle Zeb when he was
Uncle Zebekiah in the WWF, and then he was Zeb Coulter for a while.
Yep. So for those who don't know, that's Dutch
Dirty
Mantel.
Dutch Mantel.
And
Great mind for the business.
Yep.
Great talent. One of the greatest managers, performers, anything that man did.
Exactly.
He deserves more. He doesn't get enough credit for what he does.
No,
so that's why I'll praise him.
Oh,
Jim gets a lot of credit. Dutch does not. Dutch has a few books out there too, which if you can pick those up and read them, you'll see, man, this guy. Why have I not been paying attention to him longer? Because I can't say enough good things about Dutch Mantel.
Oh no, I agree. Dutch. I mean, it's like I didn't even know. For a long time, I didn't even know that a lot of half the things of a lot of the stuff that I liked about that I love about professional wrestling that got me into professional wrestling was because of Dutch Mantel's mind.
And by the way, if you were a fan of the TNA Knockouts division during the Gail Kim era where she was on top, Dutch Mantel was in charge of all that.
Yep.
He was the head guy running the women's Knockouts division in TNA. So all of that good stuff you saw, that was Dutch Mantel's handiwork.
Exactly.
It was the women wrestling as well. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to take that away from them, but I'm talking about the booking.
Yep.
Was Dutch Mantel.
Booking, the storyline, everything was...
But we talked about the guys holding it for a long time. But of course, there's the guys who hold them multiple times. Ric Flair held the WCW title 15 times. Everybody says 16. Now, here's the thing. Ric Flair says he's a 16-time world champion. And when he says that, he is counting his one WWF title run. Mm-hmm. He is the 15-time WCW champion. Booker T was a five-time.
Five-time
WCW champion. Which the first time, this one goes back to titles changing again so many times, by the way. Mm-hmm. Booker T won his first title at Bash at the Beach on July 9th, 2000. Yep. WCW went out of business in March of 2001, not even a year later. So in less than a year, Booker T won the title 5 times. Mm-hmm. Is that a problem that anybody other than me? But anyway, no, the Dudley Boys. Yeah. They've held every title there is. With the exception of the AWA and some of the companies that were already out of business. But they were definitely,
from the time they started,
decorated.
Yeah, from the time they started working to.
From the time they started, yes, they won the ECW title multiple times. Won the WCW titles after they came to WWE. After WWE bought them. Yep. They won the WWE titles a couple times.
They won TNA.
They won the Impact titles. Mm-hmm. They won the New Jersey Pro Wrestling Tag Team titles, the All Japan Pro Wrestling Tag Team titles, IWGP Tag Team titles.
Then they won New Japan as well?
What?
They won New Japan as well.
Yeah, I said that. I did mention that one. I said it right before All Japan. Okay. But yeah, even Bully Ray had held the Impact Wrestling Heavyweight Championship. They held all these titles. They are known as, they're called often the most decorated tag team of all time. Mm-hmm. Similar to how Edge is known as the most decorated WWE champion of all time, since he held tag titles. He held the Intercontinental title. He held the Hardcore title for a little while. Mm-hmm. He held the WWF World title. He held the World Heavyweight title in WWF. WWE. He held all these different titles. He's a decorated champion. So when we say a decorated champion, that's what we mean. Sometimes it's known as like the Triple Crown champion if you've held all of the belts. Mm-hmm. Or even a Grand Slam champion if you've held all the belts. These are decorated champions. These are guys who've held them all. They've done it all. And in my opinion, the most decorated tag team of all time was not the Dudley Boys. It was the Road Warriors.
I agree.
And the reason I say that is not even just because I love the Road Warriors. They're my all-time favorite tag team. Mm-hmm. But the Road Warriors, these guys came in and just dominated. They didn't come in for a little while, work, and then work their way to the top. They came in and were already on the top. Yep. Everywhere they went, you knew the Road Warriors. Yep. Whether they were in your territory or not, you knew who they were. And when they came in, you were already prepared that these guys are going to come in and tear this place apart and rip it up, and they are going to take over. It doesn't matter who's on top. Your top guys in the NWA could be wrestling, and you're like, these are the best guys in the business in this company. Now here come the Road Warriors. Instantly, you knew your guys that you just like are no longer the top guys. The Road Warriors just took it. With the exception of their WF run.
No, yeah, I agree with that.
But we'll get to that in a second. I want to first bring up the sadness that we have been waiting to bring up. This week, we lost Road Warrior Animal. Tragically, at the age of 60. And the Road Warriors, like I said, they were my all-time favorite tag team. And my brother and I, we actually were working on putting together a 2-day autograph signing in 2003 with Talking Animal, the Road Warriors. They were going to come and do a Friday and Saturday signing. And exactly 2 weeks after my final phone call at that time with Road Warrior Animal, Hawk passed away. And we lost Hawk. And it hit me hard because, like I said, we were getting ready to book them. And it was not going to happen. I was really devastated that I'm not going to get to meet Hawk ever. not going to get to work with these guys, not going to see these guys again. Because remember, not long before this, they had made an appearance in TNA and Impact.
Mm-hmm.
They made an appearance not long before this in WWF. They showed up on a Monday Night Raw.
Mm-hmm.
So the Road Warriors were still coming back and forth sparingly. We weren't seeing the last of them, but now we knew that was over. And then the Dudley Boys, they get all the credit in the world for coming out the next week on Raw. They did the Doomsday Device in tribute to them, and they had Hawk bands on their arms, and I give them a lot because they love the Road Warriors too. And you ask the Dudleys, they won't say they're the best tag team of all time. They say the Road Warriors are the best tag team of all time.
In many
They're
interviews,
humble enough to know that the Road Warriors are better than them. They're humble enough to know that.
No, yeah, no. In many interviews, I've heard Devon talk about it. I've heard Bully or Bubba, however you want to call him. I heard him talk about it. You know, they've always given the credit where the credit is due. That that the Road Warriors were the best tag team ever, and it's really a shame. It's really a shame that we lost. Now we lost both of them and I mean. For those people, for those that gotten a chance to meet them in person, or get a chance to talk to them, how in whatever way possible, if you knew them personally, especially Animal, because my dealings was with Animal, as well. It was just like, Animal. He was one of the most down to earth, coolest people that you could meet, that you could ever talk to. And most of my dealings with him was through email, and he knew I was going to the business. He knew I was going to the business, and in the emails that we exchange, as well as other ways that we communicated, he was more than willing to give advice. He was more than willing to give advice. He was kind of like giving that big brother. He gave me that big brother vibe, where he was willing to give advice. Say, hey, look, when you're talking with other names, don't do this, don't do that. It's better to do this and that. You'll get a better response, or he was like really cool like that. And and with me, it was in 2000. Like 2000, 2001ish, in that time frame. And it was just like I said, I didn't know him personally. Like, he wasn't like my friend where I talk to him daily basis or whatever. But just in my dealings alone with Animal, via email, and even in I did have a phone call with him. But again, he was always just down to earth. He was just willing to give any kind of advice, because I mean, it's really sad. It's really sad. The world, the wrestling world,
Yeah.
not just the wrestling world, but the world itself just lost a great human being.
We started with talking through email, and then he gives the number to call because we were going to discuss this seriously, and we were discussing the signing, and he just seemed like such a cool dude.
Yep.
And then that was 2003, and then 2016, we fast forward to somebody had booked Animal, and my brother and I went to the show, and we were finally going to get to meet Animal, and he was running late, and we're standing in line, and I'm getting restless. I'm getting really annoyed because I'm waiting all this time, and somebody bumped really hard into my shoulder, and I'm getting ready to turn around and yell at this person for bumping into me so hard. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to scream at this person because I'm already mad.
Yeah.
And I turn around, and I see that face paint, that spider on the forehead, walking right to me, and I'm like, oh my God, Animal just bumped into me, and I almost turned around and screamed at him. And I was so glad I did it. And then he went up to the table, and when we got up there, we purchased some autographs, paid to get a picture with him, and he let my brother wear the shoulder pads. He had the LLD 2000 shoulder pads of his. He let my brother wear them, and I had my Road Warriors t-shirt, and we took a great photo together, and Animal was just so cool. And then my brother had a card he forgot, and he was like, "Oh God, how much do I have to pay to get this signed?" And Animal goes, "You know what? That's a small little card. I'm not going to charge you for that."
Mm-hmm.
And the guy handling him even was like, "Oh no, we have to charge for that." Animal goes, "Come on, man, these guys are good guys. I'll do this for them." And
Mm-hmm.
he grabbed the card and he signed it, and he was just so nice. It was just as down to earth as he had been on the phone when we talked to him, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just awesome because he's one of my heroes, and I love meeting my heroes that I enjoy because I met so many of my heroes, and then they turn out to be jerks, and it was like so cool. This guy is so awesome.
I mean, you
And then
know how it
last
is.
year,
No, you know how it is in this business, man. You know, there's
I know,
you know,
it's not just this business, any
no,
business, the celebrity business.
yeah, but you know, but you know what I'm saying, that you know how it is in this business where you know you have these big names, big top names, and they turn out to be you know real jerks, and you know, and you know honestly, we can say that Animal was you know he is who he is. You know, he was genuine, down to earth. You know,
Last year, Animal started doing the ads for Goof Off, the
yep,
glue
yep, yep.
remover.
Oh
And
yeah,
then we actually got Goof Off at my store, and I was just thinking it was so awesome
yep,
because I'm like, I thinking of Animal, and Animal's son, he plays for in the NFL,
yeah, I heard.
and he said multiple times that his dad is his biggest fan and his biggest mentor,
Yep,
and that that shows Animal's a family man.
definitely,
He's great with his kid and great with his whole family. He
definitely,
actually passed on his anniversary with his wife, and they were celebrating their anniversary when he passed.
and he's
So
really young too.
he's a real family man.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. Nobody had a bad word to say about him. He's just a great guy. Even when Hawk was going through his demon problems and no showing events, Animal was showing up anyway and said, "I'll work anyway. I'll work single." And
Yeah.
then Animal showed up after Hawk was gone, and he worked with Heidenreich for a little while there. Even tried to get Heidenreich over, and when Hawk was having his issues in the late '90s, Animal was working with Draws, trying to get Draws over, and he was just always trying to help other people
Exactly.
to get over because that's who Animal was. He was just a great guy. He cared about the business. He cared about everything he did. He was passionate,
I mean,
and
a lot of people.
it sucks that he's gone.
Yeah, no, and what a lot of people don't realize is that you know, and with me, because you know, I've been in ministry all my life. You know, I've been in Christian ministry all my life. When I found out that you know he converted and he was a Christian and he started preaching and he started giving his story of uh, of how he came to God and everything. And like you wouldn't expect somebody like Animal, you know, the toughest of the toughest, to break down and cry. You know what I mean? You wouldn't expect that. I mean, yes, you know, even though I know he was cool and down to earth and everything, but you wouldn't expect somebody like that to break down and cry. And while he's telling his story, it's like you know he breaks down crying, and it's like you have that little bit more respect for him. It was funny because you know I'll take a look at my dad, and my dad he you know he's like that old school mentality of you know that you wouldn't expect to see him cry, and then one time I saw my dad cry, and I was like, wow, you know, like you know you have that much more, like I have that much more love and respect for my dad. So when I saw it with Animal, it was kind of that same feeling, like oh wow, I have you know, like I just have that much more respect for the guy. Like he just didn't care, you know, he didn't care. He was in a big group of people. He was, you know, he's gonna break down and cry, talking about his faith, talking about his family, you know, his kids, you know, like everything. And it was just like you really see where his priorities, you know, are and were, you know, that it was about his family, it was about you know his friends, it was about you know his faith, it was about you know helping wherever he can help, whether it was in the ring or outside the ring. You know, he was always that genuine guy where he you know he just wanted to genuinely help. You know, so you just can't help but respect that.
And he was the most talented one, in my opinion, out of the family, because of course his two brothers did try to interact in the wrestling as well. His one brother, I forget his name, but he was best known to fans. Well, let's say not best known to fans, best known to anybody who actually remembers him.
Mm.
But he did go to WCW for a little while as the Terminator, um, and he wasn't there long, and that's why a lot of people don't remember him. He wasn't really that good. And then, of course, his other brother, who also came to WCW and to WWE, Johnny Ace,
Mm-hmm.
who famously was part of the Dynamic Dudes with Shane Douglas. And then recently he's famous as being Mr. People Power, John Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really, our hearts go out to him, especially because I mean he just lost his brother, and of course Animal's son losing his father. But the Road Warriors, a lot of people don't realize just how great they were.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier this year, Dark Side of the Ring, which I can't say enough praise about Dark Side of the Ring.
Oh yeah.
They did an episode about the Road Warriors, and it was a good episode, but in my opinion, it was the worst episode of Dark Side of the Ring they've done. And the reason was, I don't know if it's just that they had forgotten stuff or not, but there was some false information given in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, there's just not much talked about. So if you want to go back and actually learn about the Road Warriors, I don't recommend the Dark Side episode being your tool. If you want something that mentions all the same exact stuff plus more, I highly recommend. I know they sugarcoat their documentaries a lot, but this one was really well done and very informative, and a lot of it was accurate. Is the WWE version, the life and death of the greatest tag team? I think that's what it was called, but it's called the Road Warriors, and it is found on the WWE Network. If you can't find the DVD, it is released on DVD as a 2-disc set with a bunch of their matches, but the documentary is on the WWE Network, and I recommend that because there's lots of great interviews with Animal and Paul Ellering and Barry Darzo and everybody who was involved in the Road Warriors career.
What I would also recommend is on YouTube the Wrestle Shoot videos.
Okay.
Okay, and you know, you go to YouTube, you look up the Wrestle Shoot videos. They did and they always do these shoot videos with all these different wrestlers, but they had both Road Warriors.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, they had both Road Warriors. And they, I mean, they basically spilled the beans on everything from when they were training to where they were training in a boxing ring that was made from
yeah, and that's all
railroad
covered in the
tie.
documentary I mentioned too, and they
Yeah,
actually show it because it was Eddie Sharkey's gym,
yeah,
and these guys all started as bouncers
yeah.
at
So
what was it called? Mama Beans? Was that the name of it?
yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, it was this bar in Minnesota that Jesse Ventura would frequent all the time, and these guys were just bouncers, and they all were. Jesse Ventura also trained by Eddie Sharkey, and they were telling him, "How would you guys like to join pro wrestling?" Because Animal and Hawk, they were monsters in the gym. Everybody knew them because they were bench pressing these freaking heavy weights, and they're like, "Man, you guys should be wrestlers." And so they all went to Eddie Sharkey's gym down there. Barry Darzo, of course, best known as Smash. He was also the Repo Man and Crusher Khrushchev and lots of other gimmicks. But these guys went down to Eddie Sharkey's gym, and this was a boxing ring, somewhat.
It was made. It was
It
made
was
out
only
of.
like half a boxing ring.
No, no.
It was missing a lot of
it was
padding and everything.
it was a boxing ring made out of railroad ties.
Yeah.
And
And
it
the
was like
walls were so close to the ropes that every time you ran the ropes, you
they
hit your
banged it.
elbows on the brick wall, and you would get bone spurs and bone chips in your
Yeah.
arm. And Animal actually told a story even how at one point he heard this big snap,
Yeah.
and it was his ankle had turned,
What
and he
was
snapped his ankle.
what was
And as he was
funny?
walking out of the place limping, he heard a big crack, and everybody was like, "What was that noise?" He goes, "That was my ankle. It popped back in place," and he was fine. So he never went for surgery or anything. He toughed it out.
Yeah, what was funny? What was funny is that Eddie Sharkey, he was renting a boxing gym that was located in the basement of a church. That's what
Yeah,
it
and the other
was.
funny thing is that Eddie Sharkey never once got in the ring with these guys.
Nope.
He would make them just, and he didn't smarten them up either. And he would just have them get in the ring, and they thought they were killing each other, so they'd kill each other in there. And Eddie Sharkey's taking their money for them to kill each other.
Yeah, and it wasn't
Man.
until much later where they were smartened up to the business.
Well, the funny thing, with that is that the Road Warriors, when they first started doing shows, they still weren't smartened up.
Yeah.
And they were legitimately killing these guys. They were decapitating their opponents, and their opponents were scared to death to work with them. But they thought, hey, that's how it works. You just get in there and beat them up.
Yeah.
So they did, and the promoters loved it because the fans loved it. So they didn't bother smartening them up.
Yeah, I think it
Nobody
wasn't.
wanted to work with these guys.
I think it wasn't until they started working with Paul Ellering where Ellering was the one that.
I think it was right before that, but
But it was around
they
that
mentioned
time
it all in
frame.
the documentary too. But yeah, it was just nobody wanted to work with them. And then they came to the AWA, and they were smartened up at this point, and they got mad at Vern Gagne because their character is they're big guys who don't want to lose. They were a lot like Bruiser Brody, where they were very protective of their character, and they didn't like Vern's finish. So they told Vern, "We're not doing it." And Vern said, "You're doing it, or you're not getting paid." So they went out to the ring, and they're like, "What are we gonna do?" They're like, "We're not doing the finish." Then Paul's like, "Okay." So during the match, they're not going. They were called go home, and they're not going for the finish. And the guys, I forgot who they're working with. They're like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "We're not going for the finish." And so these guys legitimately got mad because the Road Warriors just started beating them up.
Yep.
And so they went outside and grabbed anything they could get and just started hitting the Road Warriors. And it led to the referee to not bury himself. He had to call for disqualification. And then it ended in an all-out brawl, and they brawled to the back, and the crowd loved it. And Vern Gagne came up and said, "What are you doing? You were supposed to chop. What are you doing?" And they're like, "We didn't do the finish, but your crowd loved it. So what are you upset about?" Yep. And he goes, "In all my years, nobody's ever changed the finish on me." And they're like, "Well, we just did." Yep.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it though. It's like.
And when they first started doing the face paint, even they started doing like tribal war paint, and then they got these leather outfits that I think it was Ole Anderson who got them the leather outfits, and they just started looking like the French people.
No. It was no. What happened was that what happened, and I remember Hawk was telling the story. He was saying is that they, Ole told them, hey, you got to be like bikers or something like that, right? So. So here comes Hawk.
They had like chaps and everything and biker hats.
Yeah. What happened was that Hawk.
They looked like they were from the Blue Oyster Bar from Police Academy.
What happened was that Hawk he went to like a local bike shop or whatever, where they sell all the leather, and he bought everything leather vest, leather this, leather that, and even Hawk makes the reference that they look like like a couple of gay guys going to a bar.
Dude, you gotta make a video of them in those outfits getting in the ring. There is video because I've seen it in the documentary of them taking off the gloves and all.
Yeah.
You gotta make video of them coming out to the ring in those outfits and dub it over with the Blue Oyster Bar music.
Right. or to the song "It's Raining Men."
No, it's funnier with the Blue Oyster Bar music.
But no, but
that was a play bar.
Yeah, but no, but it was just.
But yeah, then they looked like the Village People after that, and they started having their really bad makeup. But then Animal started to really figure it out, and he admitted even he did Hawk's makeup, he did Draz's makeup, he was doing everybody's makeup because he was so good at it, and he started getting designed with the spider and everything. And then Hawk was the one who came up with the idea for the haircuts afterwards because he goes, "Well, you know what? You should get a full mohawk. I'll get the mohawks on the side, and we'll look like we'll just plug into each other." And that's how the hairdo came from, and it was really cool.
Yeah,
and you gotta admit, when the Road Warriors came out, they looked intimidating. They acted intimidating. They were just awesome, and they were coming out to Iron Man. So anytime the Road Warriors invented the term, people talk about the Road Warrior pop. It's actually a term. Because nobody will ever get that pop like the Road Warriors. There's some guys who get somewhat like it. That's why they say, "Oh, they got the Road Warrior pop." But all you had to do was hear that first riff of Iron Man, and the whole crowd knew who it was, and they jumped to their feet and just went nuts. And then the Road Warriors didn't even change their gimmick. They would just come out and beat people up. They were heels, and then they came to the NWA, and they beat up the Russian characters, and instantly they became babyfaces. Like they said, they didn't change nothing about their gimmick. Their promos didn't change, their style didn't change, nothing. and yet they became babyface just because they're feuding with the guys that people didn't like,
It's funny because
and that's amazing.
it was funny because I was hearing Jim Cornette talking about Animal and
Oh, don't tell me about that yet, man. I have not heard that yet.
all
I've
right.
been away all week, as I mentioned. I was going to be away all week, and I am so far behind on podcasts. I have 3 Cornet podcasts. I have last week's experience that came out Monday. I got his drive through that came out this week, and I got the new experience. I can't wait to listen to the watch along he did with the Hogan and Rock match. I got so many podcasts. I got Stick to Wrestling to
Well,
catch up on.
I
I'm so
think I think I can safely say this. I can safely say this without spoiling anything for you. He was kind of he was comparing comparing the Road Warriors with Ultimate Warrior, right? Okay, Ultimate Warrior, he was that loud, overpowering, he just wants to beat people up type of gimmick. And the Road Warriors, they were the bikers, they were they just beat people up and what have you. He was just comparing them and saying that compared to the Ultimate Warrior, that the Road Warriors, you know, they were willing to learn and to get better, and they kept getting better, and they kept that no matter throughout all these years. Okay, they started off they started off really green, but they got better and they learned newer things, and they learned to work even better, and they got better in the ring. Unlike Ultimate Warrior, he when he started out green, of course, he
he
kept,
stayed green.
yeah, he stayed exactly. Exactly. That's pretty much what Cornette said in that part of the live stream. And if you think about it, with, many different teams out there or many other wrestlers, that have the same style of being that overpowered like bulldozer type of setup. They got better. They got better. They learned more. They got better. Other guys, they don't. They just stick with what they know. And like you look at Goldberg. Goldberg, he didn't get any better. He just stayed with the same crap. You
Yep.
know. So
Let's move it. Okay. Finish.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm all done.
No, I'm just trying to push this along because we're getting so late now. It's already after 10.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, the Road Warriors, of course, they got their gimmick, the Road Warriors, from the movie The Road Warrior, Mad Max 2.
Yep.
The name and all, which Demolition, everybody says was a ripoff of the Road Warriors, which they were not. They were actually based off the other characters from the movie The Road Warrior. The villains of the movie were actually dressed like Axe and Smash. If you go back and watch The Road Warrior, you'll see that out there. But yeah, everybody was trying to create their own Road Warriors because Road Warriors were the best. Like I said, they were the guys. If they went to a territory, even if they'd never worked there, everybody knew who they were. And so all the territories were trying to create their own Road Warriors. So the Powers of Pain became a tag team. And then the Road Warriors would show up in the territory and they'd beat up that team that was trying to beat them.
Exactly.
And they did the infamous angle with the weight that was thrown in the gym with the Warlord,
Yep.
the Barbarian, and Animal. And Road Warriors were feared because, like, look at the feud with Dusty in '88, with which led to Starrcade '88. Dusty Rhodes and Sting versus the Road Warriors, and they did the infamous angle where Animal pulled the spike off of his shoulder pad and jammed it into the eye of Dusty and everything. And the Night of the Skywalkers with the Midnight Express up on the scaffolding at Starrcade. It's just all these, and Hawk had a broken leg in that match, by the way, or a broken foot. He had something broken, and yeah, he climbed all the way up on that scaffold. It was crazy. And then the scaffold started falling apart on them when they got up there. Even the railing of it, it was just so nuts that they could do this stuff. They were crazy, and everybody wanted that. So that's why all the territories were trying to rip them off with their own versions of the Road Warriors. And then there were so many warriors going on to begin with because Jim Hellwood, you said the Ultimate Warrior, he was the Dingo Warrior before he was the Ultimate Warrior over in World Class. And they had the modern day Warrior, Kerry Von Erich. And then people seem to forget, when they came to WWE, Vince didn't like the name the Road Warriors. So Vince wanted them to have something else, and they said, well, we were part of a group called the Legion of Doom. Sadly, though, by doing that, Vince just called them Legion of Doom, and now they're the ones that everybody talk about. Legion of Doom, they think it's Hawk and Animal. Legion of Doom was actually a whole group. It was a stable that the Road Warriors were part of. It was actually Jake Roberts and Rick Rude was in there, and the Road Warriors, and they were the Legion of Doom, and they were called the Legion of Doom.
We got a question.
Based on the yes.
We got a quick question. It says, how old was Animal? Animal was 60.
Animal was he was 60 years old.
Yeah, I figure we answer it now so that
we know who it is.
Yeah, I figure we
do we
answer
know who
it.
asked?
What? Huh?
Do we know who
Jesse.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
No, name is Jesse Rain. That's the name. That's my.
Okay.
I think that's my boy Jesse.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, Jesse.
Yeah,
he was 60 years old.
So yeah, the Road Warriors, they were part of this stable, but what happened was Jake Roberts and Rick Rude went up to WWF, and so they were gone, and all that was left with the stable was the Road Warriors. But Gary Mike Capetta would still say the Legion of Doom, so he would be like Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. So he was called them both, but Vince didn't like the Road Warriors, so they dropped it and just became Legion of Doom, and everybody forgot that Legion of Doom was a whole stable, and it was that was one of the things that was wrong in Dark Side. They tried to say, I forgot what cartoon Paul Ellering tried to say it came from, but he got it wrong because it was actually from the old Super Friends, and they mentioned it in the WWF documentary, the WWE documentary, but in Dark Side, Paul Ellering got that wrong, and I was like, that's wrong. But yeah, it came from the Super Friends. Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom, but that was where they got that, and the Road Warriors was everything they got was from movies. It's really crazy, but that went with the trend because like Mad Max was taking over all of wrestling. That's why also in the 80s they came up with the Thunderdome cage, not to be mistaken by WWE's new Thunderdome concept, because Vince created the Thunderdome, but he doesn't realize that even Mad Max went beyond the Thunderdome.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, exactly. But no, the Road Warriors were part of the first War Games. They were part of so many things in history. They were huge, and all these warriors were together. And then when the Legion of Doom came to WWE in early 90 or 89, I think it was early 90. Actually, yeah, it was 90 because it was right after the match at Great American Bash, which gets crapped on, but I like it, where the Road Warriors wrestled skyscrapers, but it was not the main skyscrapers. But one of them was me and Mark Callis, aka the Undertaker. Undertaker got to work with the Road Warriors, which ironically, when Undertaker then came to WWE in '91, they wanted to make him dominant, and in the Royal Rumble, he was actually told to eliminate the Road Warriors, and the Road Warriors weren't having any of that, and neither was Mark. Mark was the thing. I call him Mark because Mark Calloway, but the Undertaker was like really humble. Like he hated his first night. He had to come in and like eliminate Dusty out of the Survivor Series match, and he just hated that. And he hated that they wanted to eliminate the Road Warriors.
Undertaker,
and they were like, "Well, we're trying to make you dominant."
Undertaker, has had and still has a deep respect for the business and how things are done properly.
Absolutely.
So
they wanted him to be eliminating the Road Warriors to look like a big deal, and he's like, well, wouldn't it look like a bigger deal if I come in and eliminate everybody all through the match, and then I'm eliminated, and the only way I can be eliminated is by both Hawk and Animal together? And Vince went for it. So Hawk and Animal come in, and they double clothesline Undertaker over top, and he lands on his feet, so he still looks like $1 million. Plus, he'd been in the ring all this time, and the Road Warriors weren't, So it still looked, it made everybody look strong. It was great.
Exactly.
But yeah, they now had all these warriors there because then Kerry Von Erich came in too as Texas Tornado. So Survivor Series is coming up, and they put together this team with the Ultimate Warrior and Kerry Von Erich and the Road Warriors. Kerry Von Erich, of course, was known in the world class days as the modern day warrior. So now you have a whole group of warriors, and it's basically the Warriors.
Yep.
In my opinion, that's one of the everybody's calling it now the greatest Survivor Series team of all time, and I think they're doing that because Animal just passed. But I'm not gonna go there that's the greatest, because to me the greatest Survivor Series in general was 1987, and if you're talking about a dominant team, the greatest team was Andre the Giant, Rick Rude, Bam Bam Big no, Bam Bam was on the other side. I'm sorry. It was Big Boss Man and One Man Gang.
Mm-hmm.
And Butch Reed. That's the greatest team that they ever had as far as dominance. But yeah, that whole night, really, there were so many great teams together. I mean, in the opening match, I love that team when they had Beefcake and Steamboat and Savage, and Duggan was on that team. I think there was one other one.
I think McMahon missed a good advertising or he missed a good promo for the Warriors, because you remember the movie
With the Warriors come out to play.
Yeah, like no, you remember in the movie where in the big speech, where he was like, "Can you dig it?" I think McMahon missed a great opportunity by not having one of them go with that. Can you dig it, or some kind of
Yeah, and I would
variation
have
of
did
it.
this whole thing where I would have had their opponents go, "Hey, Warriors, come out to play."
Yeah, exactly. So it would have been, he missed a great opportunity with that Survivors, at least for that year.
But yeah, then the Road Warriors, they left, and then they reappeared in WCW. They had some great matches with the Harlem Heat and
Yep.
Sting and Luger.
Yep.
And then they came back to WWE. They had the feud with D-Generation X,
And
with the New Age Outlaws,
nation, and don't
the
forget
New
what
Age
nation.
Outlaws,
Don't forget what
and
Nation
they
of
shaved the
Domination.
mustache and that was really terrible though, because when they shaved the mohawks of the Road Warriors, it kind of humanized these guys. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
it was kind of
These
it's
guys
kind
have
of
always been dominant, and now you're gonna make them not only not dominant, but to the New Age Outlaws.
yeah.
It
It
just
was it
to
was
me
it
it
was
didn't work.
yeah, it was like the real life. Well, for me, it is real life being a Christian, but it was like the modern day equivalent of Samson and Delilah. You know, they cut off the mohawks and the mustache, and it was just like they they lost their strength.
In my opinion, the last good deal the Road Warriors did in their career at that point
Mhm.
was WrestleMania 13, and it doesn't get enough credit. The street fight, which came directly after Brett and Austin, I think that's why it doesn't get the credit because everybody's so out of it.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's just such a chaotic, hectic match with the Road Warriors and Ahmed Johnson,
With the Nation of
or
Domination.
Wedgie Johnson.
it,
But
it was funny.
they go up
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll tell you in a
they go
second.
up against the whole entire Nation of Domination in this street fight in Chicago, the Chicago street fight.
Yeah.
And it's just craziness. This is the kind of hardcore wrestling that just works.
Yeah.
Because you got the big sign for the arena
Yeah.
that somebody brought in, and then they're even like, they brought everything but the kitchen sink out here, the Nation of Domination did.
Yep.
And then here come Hawk and Animal, and they're carrying a kitchen sink.
Yes. That was
Which
like
never got used in the match, but it was just funny. And
no,
they're doing the fire extinguisher spot, and then they're strangling
and that
D'Lo,
was
who would become D'Lo Brown, but he didn't have a name yet.
yeah.
So Jim Ross is just like Clarence Mason and that other guy.
No, but it definitely that whole kitchen sink thing added that little bit of comedy that
Yeah,
makes
and
you laugh.
right
And
before and you knew, even though it's comedic, you knew this is gonna be a fight, and
they
that's what
brought
it
the
was.
kitchen
And
sink,
even
they
Farouk and Animal get on a table, and they're about to do a pile driver spot, and
yeah.
it doesn't quite work out as the table tips over and they both fall down. But you're just like so encaptivated by everything because this is just all out mayhem. It's a melee
Yeah.
of everybody just beating up everybody.
No, and it was funny
That you
as
just don't care what goes wrong.
no, and it's funny how you brought up the street fight, because I was gonna try to mention it as well, but you brought it up, and it was just, but it was one of the best, you know, matches of the night. You know what I mean?
Like, to me, everybody badmouths the Road Warriors in WWE, and I don't. I realize why, and I got mad the other day. In fact, because WWE put up a tribute video to Animal,
Yep.
and it said all their best moments.
Yep.
And the only moment on that video that wasn't from the WWE era was a match that they had on Nitro with the Steiner brothers in '96, where they cheated to win.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you picked their worst match from WCW and put it on there. You don't show any War Games clips.
Mm.
You don't show any AWA clips. You don't show anything that was good from these guys. You're showing all this crap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, 92 SummerSlam, them riding on the bikes was cool, but did they have to show the part with Rocco? Did anybody need to see Rocco again?
Exactly.
They showed the 91 SummerSlam when they won the belts from the Nasty Boys.
Yeah.
That was awesome too. I'll give them that one. I love WrestleMania when they wrestled the Power and Glory.
Yep.
And somebody was actually saying, oh, wow, Power and Glory got done wrong. They were such a great tag team. No, I badmouth Paul Roma every week on this show.
Yep.
I haven't missed one yet, and I'm not going to miss this one either.
Yep.
Paul Roma, you suck.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm not going to turn this into a whole thing because this is a tribute, and we're about to go off soon. So, but
the whole Paul Roma thing is a long story.
Yeah, we'll get into it one day.
Yeah.
But no, the whole thing with the Road Warriors and the natural disasters.
Yep.
These guys, they were just dominating.
Definitely.
And people forget it. And one of their best matches in WWE, unfortunately, it was a house show match, so it never made it to air, was their match with the Hart Foundation.
Yeah.
And if you can track that match down, I recommend you do, because it just shows how good Animal and Hawk are. When they were in WWE, they could work really good. They worked really good with Animal and Brett, but it was not on television. It was a house show match, but it does exist on tape, and it was released on a couple DVDs, and it may even be somewhere on the network.
And I've heard many interviews. I've heard many interviews with Bret Hart and the late Jim Neidhart that they enjoyed working with Hawk and Animal. That they always put on great matches on them.
I have a tape from the tape trading days from the great George Mayfield, and if I don't know if his website's still around, but Mr. Mayfield Mayhem, he was amazing with tapes, and he had a lot of the Japan stuff. And I got a tape from him a long time ago called "The Best of the Road Warriors in Japan," and I got reminded of that tape today because Hulk Hogan tweeted out an image of the Road Warriors giving press slams to him and his partner, who was in WWE for a little while, is Tenryu. He wrestled at WrestleMania 7, and he was also part of the 1994 Raw Rumble. And Tenryu teamed with Hulk Hogan against the Road Warriors. And Hogan wrote, "This was not a fun night because I got the press slams." But that match is just so amazing. And Hogan actually wrestles in that match, by the way. It's one of those rare matches. Pretty much everything of Hogan in Japan is gold. And they even called him Terry Golden for a while over there. And yeah, his stuff was gold. Yeah. But the Road Warriors match that they had with Tenryu and Hogan was just so good. And that's what I'm saying. The Road Warriors, everywhere they went, they had good matches. To the point where this is an interesting story too, is that the Road Warriors were part of the New Japan Pro Wrestling, or the it was the All Japan Pro Wrestling video game. And they were part of that in Japan. And that game was actually what was brought over here to the United States and remade by the company that was making the WCW video games, and they made World Championship Wrestling for the NES, which everybody hates that game, but I'm sorry, I love that game. And especially if you compare it to the other NES wrestling games, you'll see that it's not that bad. And the only characters that appear in both games, both the Japanese version and the American, is the Road Warriors. And that's why the Road Warriors ended up on the cover and everything.
Another interesting side note, since you mentioned the Japan thing, them being in Japan and everything, was that the Road Warriors, I think, I believe, if I remember correctly, they were the first ever foreigners, Americans, to be allowed to dress in the dressing room with the Japanese wrestlers. Everybody else, they have to be in a separate dressing room, but
they all had separate dressing rooms, but Hawk and Emma were welcomed in immediately. Because, like I said, they had respect everywhere they went. Exactly. Every territory, every country, everybody knew the Road Warriors. They were the guys. They were bigger than John Cena. Everybody talking about how big John Cena is. Everybody knows John Cena. Everybody talking about how big Hulk Hogan is. Everybody knows Hulk Hogan. Everybody knew the Road Warriors. Because even if you didn't watch wrestling, you knew the Road Warriors. Exactly. I mentioned them this week to a few people who never watched wrestling. They knew who the Road Warriors are. Because the Road Warriors are just that big. They were just the household names. And it was just how wrestling worked back then. You could just get entertained. Like I said, that Road Warrior pop. Like, I'll never forget when they first showed up in TNA. Everybody went crazy. Like, oh my God, they're here. anywhere they went, they brought credibility with them. It
Exactly.
was like just oozing right through them.
Exactly.
And then even when Animal came back and did the run, he was in the Royal Rumble in 2007, I believe it was. No, it was 2006. 2006. I'm searching my memory bank, but no, 2006. Animal was in the Royal Rumble, and he had a huge screw up with Rob Van Dam. Rob actually gives him the kick.
All right, go ahead.
What happened?
Oh no, we had a brief glitch for some reason. Well, go ahead.
All right, well, we're getting ready to get off on this anyway, but yeah, the Road Warriors, they were amazing, and now they're both up in heaven, and they're having great matches up there, I'm sure, reunited, and I'm sure my brother's got a front row seat seeing them.
Cheering.
And even though my brother and I didn't get to meet Hawk and Animal together in 03 like we planned, I'm sure now he's gotten to meet them, and I'm jealous of that.
Both.
I can't wait till I get up there to see them myself.
Both your brother and my grandfather got front row seats and watching Animal and Hawk just destroy the competition. It's just,
it's just
one day soon, brother. Well, not soon, but
love
one
the Road
day.
Warriors, man. Love them, and
one day in the future.
Animal.
One day in the future, we'll meet them in person. That's the way I see it.
But this is where we're going to close off today.
Yes.
Was there any questions before we close off?
No, not that I can tell.
Next week, we're not totally sure what we're going to discuss yet. We did a lot of heavy wrestling talk this week, so we'll come up with something that's not as much wrestling talk. We might do some, and of course, if something happens in the current event, we'll have to talk about that as well. But we're trying to mix it up a bit, not do a wrestling talk every single week. Last week we had a long discussion on Rocky. You can go through the archives, check out some of the old stuff.
Yep.
And again, check out Josue Skits.
Yep.
Check out At the Movies on the Big Time Jimmy Larson channel. All of those are linked into the description. And we want to thank you for joining us this week. So for myself and for CT Bishop, this has been another great edition of What's Going Down.